Buenas and half a day. The Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture is now called to order. Today is Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021. The time is now 9:01 a.m. Notices for these hybrid hearings were disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets on Tuesday, October 26, 2021, and again on Friday, October 29, 2021. The notice was also published in the Guam Daily Post on those same days. Now for the rules of conduct. The Zoom meeting is hosted by the legislators, AV staff, and the Committee on Health, Land, and Justice and Culture. And I thank them for their assistance. The host of this hearing will mute all Zoom participants until called upon by the chair. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking and begin by stating their name for record-keeping purposes. For those that are on Zoom, please ensure that you're unmuted when you're called to speak. So for the record, I am covering on behalf of the speaker who had asked me to cover due to illness. But she's also here to listen in case there's any questions. The agenda items that will be heard today are the following. Bill number 21-36 COR, sponsored by Senator Clynton and Ridgell. It's an act to transfer administrative jurisdiction of lot number 526 new, consisting of 1,555,754 square meters in the municipality of MERIZO from the government of Guam to the Department of Agriculture for the purpose of developing the Guam Forest System Plan. The next agenda item is Bill number 20-36 COR, introduced by Senator Clynton and Ridgell. It's an act to transfer administrative jurisdiction of lot number 507 Conservation Reserve, consisting of 5,509,664 square meters in the municipalities of INARAJAN, TALOFOFO, MERIZO, and UMATAC from the government of Guam to the Department of Agriculture, also for the purpose of developing the Guam Forest System Plan. The third item on the agenda today is Bill number 188-36 COR, introduced by Senator Clynton and Ridgell. It's an act to transfer lot number 7150 R-4-new-1-1 from the Tribal Land Trust commissioned to the Department of Agriculture for the purpose of establishing a slaughterhouse and providing up to $3 million in financial assistance. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues that have joined me here today. Senator Joanne Brown, Senator Terlaje, Senator Tony Atta, and I think the speaker too as well. So now to begin our agenda, we will begin with testimony for Bill number 21-36 COR, authored by Senator Clynton and Ridgell. It's an act to transfer administrative jurisdiction of lot number 526 new, consisting of 1,555,754 square meters in the municipality of MERIZO from the government of Guam to the Department of Agriculture for the purpose of developing the Guam Forest Plan. And we will also be combining testimony for Bill number 20-36 COR, also introduced by Senator Clynton and Ridgell. It's an act to transfer administrative jurisdiction of lot number 507 Conservation Reserve, consisting of 5,509,664 square meters in the municipalities of INARAJAN, TALOFOFO, MERIZO, and UMATAC from the government of Guam to the Department of Agriculture for the purpose of developing the Guam Forest System Plan. Okay, because of their similar intent, the first and second items will be heard together. Before we hear from those present today to testify, so we would like to ask the sponsor to introduce the bills. I see he's not present yet. So perhaps we will reach out to him when we acknowledge him when he joins us. So for now, we will begin to accept testimony for both of these bills. And right now on our list, we have several people today who have signed up to testify. We have Edwin Rages, the administrator of the Guam Coastal Management Program from the Bureau of Statistics and Plans. So I'd like to now recognize Edwin to provide his testimony. Zeus Masi, Edwin.
Buenas, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senators, for giving me the opportunity to provide testimony on these bills.
Sorry.
Just to,
Oh, sorry, excuse me, Edwin. We do have Senator Ridgell. My apologies. So if I would like to now switch the floor, if you don't mind.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, you guys can go ahead. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's okay. He can go ahead with his testimony.
Okay. All right.
Madam Chair, we still need an explanation of the bill. So if the author of the bill can explain the measure, I greatly appreciate, because it wasn't explained, Senator Ridgell, so.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah, I can do that.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so Senator Ridgell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my statement will be on both bills 20-36 and COR and 21-36 COR. Both basically do the same thing. The Guam Forestry Legacy Act of 2012 was established for the protection and conservation of natural resources and natural habitats or ecosystems, open spaces and historic artifacts, and to set aside land for outdoor recreation and education, which is of critical importance to the people of Guam, to whom the land belongs and demands ever-increasing visual and continual effort. The government of Guam realizes its responsibility to further allow the Department of Agriculture to meet its mandated mission of developing and protecting the agriculture, natural resources, and aquatic and wildlife resources of Guam, and to further set into statute practices that allow for the conservation and protection of these resources. The purpose of both bills, number 20-36 COR and bill number 21-36 COR, is to identify and make available government properties determined to have compatible use for the Guam forestry system, so that they'll be included in an inventory. I ask my colleagues to support these bills. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you, Senator Ridgell. So now we would like to hear testimony from Mr. Edwin Regis from the Guam Coastal Management Programs, Bureau of Statistics and Plans. Thank you, Edwin.
Madam Chair, and thank you again. So just to provide a point of clarification, my role today is to provide our agencies kind of an understanding and background information on our agency's participation in fulfilling our mandates, which is to harmonize planning across government agencies. So I don't think it is the Bureau's and specifically Coastal Management's role to discuss or to speak on some of the nature in terms of ownership in which the two primary bills will establish. But I'm certainly here to answer any questions in terms of the work that we've been doing to advance the Guam Forest System Plan and how we see that instrument being vital to manage the forest systems, which then accomplishes our objectives and goals for a sustainable and functioning forest system. So with that, Madam Chair, I would defer to your next testimony, but I remain here to provide technical assistance if the need should arise concerning our planning authorities.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Regis. So now we'd like to hear testimony from Christine Feheran from the Forestry Division. She's the Forestry Division Chief of the Guam Department of Ag. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you. I'm going to be very brief here. So thank you for the opportunity to provide written testimony for bills number 21-36 and bill number 20-36. The bills complement the intent of the Guam Forestry Legacy Act of 2012 to protect, preserve, and manage conservation forests throughout Guam. These lands will advance efforts to protect and conserve natural habitats and ecosystems, cultural landscapes, outdoor recreation, and education island-wide. They will be managed from a landscape scale for the permanent protection of watersheds, increasing biodiversity, improving ecological resilience, and carbon sequestration, supporting strategies to address climate change for both adaptation and mitigation, protection of Guam's southern viewsheds, cultural spaces, and the necessary ecological balance for the forest system to prevent deterioration and destruction. These spaces are extraordinarily difficult to develop for other uses, and access to new funding would help the government of Guam to meet conservation targets without as much local investment. The economic benefits and potential would be the growth of a green industry, pursuing the G3 Guam Green Growth Initiative goals, and supporting new local nonprofits that are providing jobs and income to people. We have limited control over private properties Therefore, it's imperative that we act to protect the lands we have under the government of Guam, the lands for today, tomorrow, and our future generations. All in there. But thank you again for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Guam Department of Agriculture, Forestry, and Soil Resources Division. Forgot to introduce myself, Christine Camacho-Ferrin, Forestry Division Chief.
That's Tuzmasi, Christine, for that testimony. So now we'd like to recognize Vice Chairperson Angelita Mendiola from the Southern Guam Soil and Water Conservation District. So Ms. Angie, if you can turn on your video.
Yes. Half a day, Senator Sabina. Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity to
I'm sorry,
submit our testimony from the Southern District, Southern Guam Soil Water Conservation District. Our chairman is having a national meeting at this time. So yes, thank you. Buenas and half a day to all the committee, members of the committee. On behalf of the Southern Guam Soil and Water Conservation District, we express our full support of Bill 21-36 and Bill 20-36.
Okay.
Just a minute, please. We believe the purpose of the bill are in the best interest of people of Guam, especially the southern villages and our island, as it pushes forward the need for conservation for our island. As you know, the Guam Soil Water are mandated to work in partnership with the University of Guam and all government agencies overseeing local and federal conservation program to promote the conservation of our natural resources and the development and use of soil and water resources in order to control and prevent soil erosion and flooding. Soil erosion and flooding are big issues down south. With this new purview, we believe Department of Agriculture with partners, we can do great things to help address these resource concerns. Long-term protection of land is also a major priority for the Guam Soil Water Conservation Districts. And with that, we look forward to collaborating with the Department of Agriculture and other affiliated partners to further the mission of conservation in these southern areas. So again, we are in full support of the two bills. And thank you to Senator Ridgell for this bill and also for the committee. And I look forward for the approval of this bill and to get it signed into law. Thank you, Hafidai, to all of you guys. Keep safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Mendiola. So the committee has also received testimony, written testimony in support to Bill 21-36 COR and Bill 20-36 COR from Victor Torres for both bills. For the record, the committee sent requests for feedback to the following agencies and programs, some of which are still pending. So the Honorable Mary Jessie Allig, President of the Mayor's Council of Guam, Honorable Mayor Johnny Kanata, the Municipality of UMATAC, the Honorable Mayor Anthony P. Chargaloff, the Municipality of INARAJAN, the Honorable Mayor Ernest T. Chargaloff, the Municipality of Moleso, and the Honorable Mayor Vincent S. Taitaqui of Municipality of Talofofo. Requests were also sent to the Director of Guam Department of Ag, Ms. Chelsea Munibrecht, who's also present here today, Mr. Joseph Borja, Director of the Guam Department of Land Management, Administrator Walter Leon Guerrero of the Guam Environmental Protection Agency, as well as Dr. Jensen, Director and Chief Hydrogeologist of WIRI. So I noticed that there are several of you that are here today. Would you like to present any oral testimony? I guess starting with Director Chelsea. Okay. Sorry, if you can unmute, please.
Hi, Hafaday. Thank you for allowing me to provide testimony. on behalf of the Department of Agriculture. This has been something we've been working on for a really long time with a lot of partners. Sorry. Here we go. And so Bill 20-36 and 21-36, I agree with Christine that these complement the intent of the Guam Forestry Legacy Act, which mandated that the Guam Forest System Plan be developed to protect, preserve, and manage conservation forests throughout Guam. These lands will advance efforts to protect and conserve natural habitats and ecosystems, open spaces, historical artifacts, land, outdoor recreation, and education island-wide. They will be managed from a landscape scale for the permanent protection of watersheds, natural scenic scapes, historical resources, and the necessary ecological balance of the forest system to prevent its deterioration and destruction. In addition, Bills 20-36 and 21-36 support Guam's Forest Action Plan, which prioritizes forest management amidst changing landscapes impacted by increased urbanized zones, roadways, impervious surfaces, wildfires, invasive species, and all of which introduce significant disturbances to Guam's forests. The Forest Action Plan aligns with national, state, and private forestry themes and objectives to protect, conserve, and enhance wildlife and fish habitat, connect people to trees and forests, and engage them in environmental stewardship activities, restore fire-adapted lands, and reduce risk of wildfire impacts, and to manage and restore trees and forests to mitigate and adapt to global climate change. The bills introduced by Senator Ridgell and hopefully soon to be passed by this legislature will advance efforts to conserve Guam's forest resources and the species that depend on them in southern Guam. Funding has already been identified and is available through the Readiness and Environmental Protection Integration Program. Proposed activities may include, but have not been limited to, propagation, outplanting, and establishment of native plant species, installation of erosion control treatments, monitoring, and adaptive management practices. The Department of Agriculture understands the intent of Bills 20-36 and 21-36 and fully supports these items. The proposed bills are consistent with the division's mission to conserve, protect, and enhance Guam's vegetative environment and sustain the natural resources which are dependent on healthy forests. Thank you.
Suzus Masi, Director Munibrecht. So now I'd like to also give the floor to Director Borja. Were you going to present oral testimony on Bills 20-36 and 21-36?
Not really, Senator, but you got me there when you said, are you going to prevent? No, I'm not going to prevent. Actually, maybe just a brief history on the property to lay some concerns about ownership. These were actually designated as reserved for this purpose under Public Law 2218. And Public Law 2218, of course, was initiated with the inception and the enactment or the inception of the CHAMORRO Land Trust Commission, where agencies were required to come down to the legislature, present what you need, for planning purposes. And certainly these lots were involved in that process. And what it was is Public Law 2218 required actually the Department of Parks and Rec, Department of Land Management, and the CHAMORRO Land Trust to come together and develop a master plan for the park, because there were three agencies that were not given any land under Public Law 2218. Public Law 2218 usually referred to as the reservation of government land for the different agencies. And there were three agencies that were not given any land. The Mayor's Council, one of them because they all wanted 21 pieces of land around the island. The other one was Department of Agriculture, because their request was large tracts of land, agricultural land, big tracts. And the third one was actually Parks and Recreation, because parks, conservation areas, natural preserves, naturally they're big pieces. So the legislature was concerned about giving these agencies large tracts of land without the proper vetting. So the vetting process that the legislature required was Public Law 2218. I don't remember the section, but if you read the narrative part of the public law, you will see that it required those two agencies to get together, develop a master parks plan, conservation plan, which is the master parks plan of 1999. And in that park plan, these two lots were listed in those properties, in that listing. So the plan, I don't know, 20 years ago, whatever it is, back to Public Law 2218, was to designate these properties as, for natural preserve purposes. And then along in 2012 became, the Forestry Registry Act, which tries to identify, narrow the scope, or rather broaden the scope of the forestry system plan. And then as recent as, I believe September, we had a mini summit of agencies, agriculture, biostatistics and plan, and land management. I believe as well as CHAMORRO Land Trust, I believe. And we had a mini summit down at, I believe it was one of the hotels there, where it was further flushed out. Much more information was provided and requested for that. So yes, this is, it was reserved years ago for natural preserve conservation area. And I guess this would be the final step. Now, it is already in Gulf Guam's hands. It belongs to Gulf Guam. But more and more agencies receiving federal funds, the grantors are actually requiring that if you are a grantee agency for a project involving land, we kind of like require you to own the land, so we don't take it away from you, for whatever purpose other than what we gave it to you. So that's basically my comment on the bill. If there's a question, does CHAMORRO Land Trust own this property? The answer is no, and it's been planned for years, decades actually, as a preserve, and it's about time. And may I note also that the environmental conference going on in Scotland at this moment has a big forestry, reforestation, and forestry aspect to it. So Guam is keeping in step with the international issues about climate change and like that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you so much, Director Borja. So just to confirm, the jurisdiction is under Department of Parks and Rec. Is that correct?
Yes, under by Public Law 2218.
Okay, all right, thank you so much. All right, so I'd like to recognize Dr. Jensen. I know if you would like to provide any oral testimony at this time, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm here at the invitation of the speaker. I didn't have any prepared testimony, but I did a little homework on the bills. And I'll just contribute that this is, obviously something that's been long planned and well conceived, and is informed by a lot of effort that has gone into look at each aspect of it. And I asked my faculty to take a look at it and see if there's anything that we should alert anybody to, or any aspects that might have been overlooked or should be considered. And nobody found anything. It's always a step forward when you can deliberately manage your natural resources, and this is a step in the right direction for managing watersheds, controlling the erosion, and all the other good practices that can go with good land management. So I'm here to endorse it and suggest that we go forward with the plan. Looks good.
Thank you, Dr. Jensen. Would you be able to stay on for questions later?
Certainly.
Okay, great. We do have other people here who are here to testify on bills 20 and 21-36. I believe Tom Camacho, would you like to present any testimony?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and to the committee for allowing me the opportunity to testify. I also thank the author of the bill, Senator Ridgell, for his vision and foresight in ensuring conservation practices throughout this island does occur. as you know, Madam Chair, this piece of legislation is long overdue. And the Director Borja is partially correct in terms of 2218. The Department of Agriculture, and it's found on page 22, line 1, was listed in the Guam Reserve land list. However, with the proposed facility, and it's evidenced as a conservation and natural reserve, but in that bill, there was no village, there was no lot number, but they did give a total of 33,449 acres. So what I'm saying is that this bill is needed. It's about time. It's long overdue. Ridge to reef is a critical component in an ecosystem approach to management. And I think it's high time that we start working on conservation practices that affect our cultural resources as well as our natural resources and the resources that, sorry, my phone is ringing and I'm on my other phone. The resources that our fishermen use for subsistence and sustainability. So I just wanted to pledge my total support for this legislation, both of the legislations, 20-36 and 21-36. And again, I thank the author for his vision and foresight in the introduction of this bill. Thank you very much for allowing me.
Thank you, Mr. Camacho, for your testimony. Are there anyone else here that would like to provide testimony? We don't have anybody else signed up, but I just want to make sure everybody had a chance that is here today. Okay, I don't see any response in the chat, so we'll move forward. So just some notes on the fiscal impact. I just want to share with the public the fiscal impact note on Bill 20-36. So it states the proposed transfer of Lot 507 would mean Department of Ag Forestry Division and its available resources will now be responsible for the maintenance of the land. So at the time of the writing, it said absent feedback from the Department of Ag, the Bureau is unable to determine if the Department of Ag's current local federal resources are sufficient to cover additional acres of conservation area or if they will need additional resources. And that is also noted on the fiscal impact note for bill number 21-36. Pretty similar, it states the proposed transfer of lot 526 new would mean Department of Ag Forestry Division and its available resources will now be responsible for the maintenance of the land. And so it pretty much duplicates what was stated in the fiscal impact note for bill number 20-36 COR. Okay, so now I guess that leads to the question. I guess now we're into the question phase of this for these two bills. I guess that leads to the question of, maybe perhaps if the Department of Ag can highlight the resources, maybe identify resources that are needed resources that are available or potentially on the horizon to manage the additional lands with the transfer. So that I guess that could go towards the director or.
Sure. Hold on, sorry. I'm bringing up, we did submit a fiscal note to BBMR in January 21st for these two bills. So I can read off just our comments if you would like, Senator Therese.
Yes, absolutely. That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. So I started obviously that we're in full support of both bills. If passed as written, each bill will not create or add any undue cost for the Department of Agriculture. The funds needed to manage the areas will be sought through various grant funding opportunities, some of which have already been secured, such as the $2 million obtained through a partnership with Joint Region Marianas to secure the Department of the Navy of Navy's Readiness and Environmental Protection Integration Program funding opportunity. Other funding opportunities are available through DOAG's Forestry and Soil Resources Division, USDA state and private forestry grant programs. Lands managed by Guam Forestry for reforestation projects are funded by USDA state and private forest grant funds. These funds provide for operational supplies and equipment. DOAG forestry personnel are locally funded and conduct all maintenance, fuels reduction work, tree work, and forest management work on managed sites. In recent years, grant funds have been used to pay for contractual vegetation management services, which is a common practice among state forestry agencies across the nation. Funding streams include, but are not limited to, USDA Forest Service state and private forestry grants, consolidated grants, landscape scale restoration, forest legacy funds, USDA State Fire Assistance Cooperative Fire Protection Program grant, Wild Urban Interface grants. The LSR Landscape Scale Restoration Project is an example of forestry gaining access to lands for restoration efforts. The site sits within the Menel Watershed, which is covered by both bills. Per the Guam Forest Action Plan, it is DOAG Forestry's mission to protect and enhance Guam's existing green spaces, and therefore, the Forest Action Plan maps out our 10-year plan to meet our mission goals. The Forest Action Plan is the roadmap for funding support with the USDA Forest Service, and the lands identified in bills 20-36 and 21-36 are included as potential sites for reforestation and enhancement efforts, meaning that they are already identified within our Forest Action Plan so that our funders are aware of the potential activities which may ensue on these lands.
Okay, thank you so much, Director. Yes, and congratulations on completing the forest system plan. I think that was a huge achievement. And I know you're working on the next cycle.
Yes.
So in regards to, so looking at the Forest Legacy Act, there was supposed to be regulations that were accompanying regulations that should go with the statute. Has there been any, I guess, what is the progress with the rules and regs? And what's the status on that?
Sure. Well, let's see. Oh, Edwin's on here too. AG has been working collaboratively with Edwin and his staff and their programs, their coastal zone management program, to develop the rules and regulations, which most recently we had the Forest Summit meeting, which Director Borja also mentioned, and included many agency representatives. There were multiple agencies present. So the regulations are coming together through a comprehensive process that includes all government agencies that will have input on it. So it was actually really an impressive summit that CZMP put together and facilitated for us.
Okay.
And I mean, we had multiple agencies giving input on this specific project. And it's, I mean, if anyone working government knows, that can be a challenge to even get everyone assembled into one location, let alone to have us there for the whole day, providing input, professional input on this process.
Yes, understood. So can you share a draft of these rules with the committee? Is there?
I'm sure we can.
Great. And when was that again? When did the meeting happen?
It was a couple of months ago. So maybe, was it August, Edwin?
It was September.
September.
I believe September 1st.
Okay. And so we got, so what type of restrictions will be placed on the use of the property, such as hunting licenses, hunting seasons, or anything else? Was there any discussion on that?
There's no restrictions. I mean, any restrictions, hunting restrictions would be just following what's in compliance with Guam law already. Hunters are allowed to hunt on government-owned property, but they must obtain a hunting license and then follow the accompanying laws, such as not hunting after sunset, et cetera, and wearing the prescribed colors and such. The restrictions were more, not restrictions, but the regulations that have been drafted thus far are designed around the requirements in the Forest Legacy Act, which would specify research, education, recreational use, and the restrictions that we're designing or the regulations we're being designed currently are on a more general approach, because each specific property would have then specific rules that are tailored to that specific site, because we can't have like necessarily a blanket approach for everywhere on the different properties.
Okay.
It all depends on the landscape, the resources that are present within that property, etc.
Okay.
Christine or Edwin, did you want to add anything to that? I'm sorry, that's for you to say.
Yeah, thank you, Director. Yeah, if there was any additional comments from Christine?
Thank you, Director. Yes. So it wasn't about a keep out sign or restriction. It's the rules and regs that we're shooting for are really just to keep everyone safe, right? The property's safe, and they will be designed for each individual parcel. So we're excited. You know, funding is identified. It can be awarded, and it was just that administrative authority that we were never able to attach to these proposals, and that's been the gap.
Okay. There was a question from the chat from Mr. Camacho. He would like perhaps coordination with the Southern Water Conservation Districts. Were they involved in the last meeting in September?
That's a question for me, ma'am?
Oh, no. I'm just...
Okay, thank you. That's okay. Just clarifying.
Yeah, this question is for Department of Agriculture. So Director Chelsea. Yeah, was Southern Soil part of the discussion in September, the last meeting that you had regarding drafting the rules and regulations?
Oh, Edwin has his hands. I'm not sure if, sorry.
Yeah.
I think they were invited.
Oh, okay, yeah, I guess you had mentioned, just to clarify, Director, you mentioned there was a group of stakeholders that you that met recently.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering if you know, perhaps widening the net to Southern Soil and Water Conservation, were they part of that meeting? Edwin? Or?
Yeah, I can answer that if you like. Yeah, so thank you very much for that question. And so just to kind of give some context to this discussion, I'll start back where we talked a bit about the rule drafting and kind of where we are in terms of the plan formulation. But essentially, if you look at the procedures for the Guam Forest System Plan, the Forest Legacy Act, the mandates are broadly, one, to identify the lands that are going to fall in the inventory, specify in terms of actionable items and policy what's going to be allowable, what are the aspirations, what are the enough specifics that we want to achieve in terms of a robust working system that also takes into account things like public access and recreation. And then three, it is then provides the mandate to actually write the rules. And so part of the challenge in terms of providing planning support that we have been experiencing is that sometimes you have drivers that want to get right into the rulemaking, and then sometimes you have drivers that, you know, kind of go back and look at the context for plan adoption. In this case, we have a kind of a third driver, which looks at designation of property that refers to the Guam Forest System Plan, which has not yet been adopted. And so really that's quite a bit of different overlays in terms of organizations, interests, and with our specific interests, it really is to come up with a plan that's comprehensive and enforceable. And that really starts with adopting the plan. And so with the particular rules, that's not yet going to be produced until we finalize the plan, and that's we're hoping to get that plan, which will have enough information to give our constituents and you senators an idea of what the plan hopes to achieve, but it still allows for some formulation of site-specific management plans, which is really the way that we should implement a focused approach in terms of looking at each individual watershed's landscape. And so that is going to allow for, you know, continual kind of involvement and continual allow for a dynamic process, for the planning process to be dynamic. But essentially what you would have is inventory of of lands in which these two properties that is being heard today will be, it's included in the draft inventory along with many other lots that were identified through this summit that we had. And this summit, this planning summit really was an opportunity to bring in the key government stakeholders to look at what the overall intent is in terms of the master plans for conservation. And we looked at the historic documents that was produced in 1999, as Mr. Borja mentioned, as mandated by 22-18, as well as the intent of the Forest Legacy Act, which is really to provide this list. So the summit was based on historical research and based on the work that was done in the past as required by law. The problems with that master plan is that it was just never adopted. So, you know, if that was adopted in 1999 or 2000, I really don't think there would have been a need to either do the Forest Legacy Act or even these very, very important bills. So that comprehensive approach really involved the agencies, I believe, for the first time, where you had not only BSP, agriculture, you had land management, you had representatives from Chamorro Land Trust, and you had Guam Ancestral Lands Commission to look at the different properties, to propose properties that would be beneficial for the forest system plan, and to identify any constraints within those properties that we need to know about in terms of compatibility with this forest system plan. And that's, I think, a very important achievement in terms of creating a reference point that says us agencies believe that these listed properties really do represent a comprehensive and extensive delineation and identification of lands that would serve the purpose of creating a robust forest system. There's a lot of other considerations that we need to take into account in terms of, you know, whether or not you want to allow for hunting and you want to allow for off-roading and those kind of things. But I think in terms of specificity, the site-specific management plans would cover that. But I think overall, broadly within the draft plan that we are preparing, we'll set some strong policy that says you shouldn't off-road where you just planted new trees. Of course, it'll be much more, you know, thoroughly explained in terms of procedure, but you know, we definitely want to call out those conflicts in terms of uses and ensure that at the end that this plan represents the best way forward that achieves a robust forest system, but it still allow for access, recreation, and those other things in which the forest system offers for people. Thank you, ma'am.
Right. Thank you so much, Edwin, for that clarification. So basically, the rules and regs would have to come after the forest plan is finalized. And so what is the timeline for that? What do you see as a timelines for getting the plan?
I can speak to the plan and the Director Chelsea, if you can also jump in terms of the plan, but so we are right now kind of in our final draft review of the forest system plan. So our office has been working really hard over these past few weeks to make sure that there's a good information in this document that really fulfills the intent of the legislatures back in 2012. And so we hope to get that before the governor for her consideration at the end of this month. And I can kind of speak to that. I can't speak to how much time the governor will need to assess this within her team before making her decision. But hopefully that we have done enough coordination amongst the leaders that she has in her cabinet that they'll advise on adopting what we propose and then send it on to you guys for your review.
Okay. And then after that point, then the rules and regs would be developed?
Absolutely. We have some good drafts in terms of the rules and regulations, but I would hesitate to comment on that until the plan is adopted, because things can change.
Do you foresee, so upon adoption of the forest plan, do you foresee completing the rules and regs within 90 days?
I believe that's a requirement of statute, so it's a no-fail mission, I think, for both ag and us.
Okay, so, and as far as notifying the public. That's all included, right? So if more.
Absolutely. The Bureau upholds its mandate for public inclusion in all of our planning initiatives. We take that mandate very seriously.
Great. So thank you so much, Edwin. So I do want to recognize Chairperson John Regis from the Toronto Land Trust Land. And so maybe you can confirm what was said earlier, that the CLTC does not have any jurisdiction over this property. Is that your understanding?
Correct, yes.
All right, thank you so much. Did you want to add anything to did you want to provide any oral testimony at this time?
Not for this particular one, the 18836 for sure.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, now continuing on with the questions. This is for Director Chelsea. So in the previous hearing for these bills, last term, I believe, it was stated that if these properties are not under your jurisdiction, that lands can be redesignated for other purposes, such as siting the wind turbines on property that was under the jurisdiction of the Department of Public Works. Forestry Chief Verheeren also recognized that there were breaks in the communication between agencies, citing the removal of African tulip that never happened, with jurisdictional issues and plans for the Veterans Cemetery. The Guam Forest Legacy Act, Section 63506C states that the department may also establish a memorandum of agreement with the Department of Parks and Rec for land that is part of Department of Parks and Rec inventory, including the Guam Territorial Park System reserve properties classified as natural preserves and conservation reserves pursuant to Section 77110 of Chapter 77, Title 21, Guam Code annotated. Would an MOA not function to preserve the lands identified for conservation work in this situation? Is that clear?
I think the gist of the question was, would an MOA be sufficient? I think some of the perspectives we've shared on that is that to some extent MOAs are sufficient, but MOAs can also change depending on the directors sitting in place at any given time. And sometimes MOAs also get lost or forgotten throughout the years. And some of the funding sources that we've discussed or mentioned require commitments of no less than 20 years.
Madam Chair, if I can add to that.
Yes, Edwin, you're recognized.
Thank you. And so my understanding of the Forest Legacy Act, in which the two bills refer to, is essentially what that is going to establish is a legal constraint for these properties, which really is a development right. Right? You have certain things that you can't do and you can't do. The things you can't do would be anything that's in contrary to creating a robust forest system. So the Forest Legacy Act also clearly states that the jurisdiction of these properties will be under Department of Agriculture. Now, I think both bills mention jurisdiction, but my question is, does that constitute ownership? And I clearly understand what jurisdiction means. So let's say under the forest system plan, it will allow for identified lands to still be owned by other entities, but it'll still fall under the jurisdiction of the Department of Agriculture, meaning that that jurisdiction and the powers of that jurisdiction would be applied in any kind of use or future use for those properties. Similar to if we wanted to do something in the Seashore Reserve or waters of the US, that would fall under the jurisdiction of the Army Corps of Engineers, for example, for certain things, in which that jurisdiction enforcement would be held by USACE, just like the jurisdiction enforcement for the list of the properties under our list would still fall under Department of Agriculture. The MOA features and those things, I think, are mechanics that allow for kind of more, much more programmatic or project type of uses for the other for properties in the lands, but it's definitely not the main instrument for control.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Edwin. Christine, you had something to add? Wanted to add to this?
I think it was all pretty much covered. It's just the differences would be the investment in the long haul versus an MOA. You know, the director, both Edwin covered this, that we have a very temporary situation versus we would have the authority to continue, the administrative authority to continue to do this work without it being broken and fragmented, which has been a continual problem when you look at forest resources across the island. So just keeping that in mind.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Christine. All right. Does Department of Ag have any MOAs authorized by the Guam Forest Legacy Act with Department of Parks and Rec or any other agencies for any of the properties listed in the inventory? This is for Director Breck.
No, we do not.
Okay. So there are numerous properties in your inventory under jurisdiction of other agencies, such as Guam Ancestral Lands Commission, CHAMORRO Land Trust, Guam Waterworks, in addition to Department of Parks and Rec. But what specifically on the subject properties of these two bills requires land transfer as opposed to other properties in your inventory?
These were basically the lower hanging fruit, with less complex issues that needed to be addressed before we could begin, or I guess seek administrative authority over them.
Okay, and when you say lower hanging fruit, can you explain?
Just that the less restrictive or less complex, like if we were to work with land that's under the, I guess, ownership of, let's say, Guam Waterworks Authority, then we have to consider what their land, which parcels, what their use was for that land, or if they had any intentional use, if it was part of their 20-year planning process. I mean, these lands were not utilized for householder dwellings. They were the easier to work with, to identify actual ownership. There's no infrastructure built into them that would make it, I guess, ideal for housing and such. So it was just conservation lands that we could begin conservation work on.
Okay.
Their remoteness in nature make a big difference.
Yeah.
That's where people aren't, unless you're on an ATV in high end and riding in, even then you'd have your challenges, and it's on foot most ways for Bolanos. So the Bolanos track and then the Menel track, these are so remote that, you know, volunteers are hiking 2 miles in, and even then they're burned out to get to these sites. Coastal Conservation Area is a good example of forestry doing management work for 40 years. But we're finding out that with the new solar, with the new power poles going up, that's going to cut into considerable footage within the forest edge. Properties going up, that's cutting into more forest edge. And then the fact that it's a GWA identified site for potential water. And we already have the wind turbine there. So that, without it being under administrative authority with DOAG, with Department of Agriculture, you're looking at a 40-year-old forest that now potentially has a timestamp end date on it. So what's going to be our next move? What's going to be the plan? And where can we continue to reforest, slow down the erosion rates into these watersheds and clogging up the water, GWA infrastructure? We need to get these forestry practices and work done upland. So Bolanos will help us protect precious habitat that's there. Menel will continue to help us protect the community down below, the watershed all around, and the marine preserve at the end. And hold remaining artifacts in place.
And thank you, Christine. Question for John Jensen. Can you just give maybe your perspective of the amount of water that flows in these watersheds from Lot 20 and Lot 21, or sorry, for Bill 20 and Bill 21. So perhaps if you can kind of explain the amount of water that lands in these areas.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have that those statistics on the top of my head, but I can get my faculty to look it up and provide that to you. But you know, any significant piece of a watershed is important to manage. If they're not managed, they can contribute erosion problems or any other problems. So, you know, even if it isn't a huge proportion of the watershed, it's a step forward. So it's certainly worth doing from that perspective.
Yeah, I think it from my I think research, or if I recall, the area where the Bill 21 would reserve, I think it's one of the largest. It receives one of the largest amounts of water in the South. Yeah, so it's very voluminous. Yeah, I think it may be the largest, if not.
Yeah, well, the South is, as everyone knows, is really steep terrain, and we get heavy storms. And even when we don't have typhoons or tropical storms, we get rainfall like we had a couple of weeks ago, when you have 3 or 4 days with a couple inches a day. You get significant runoff out of these watersheds, and you can have flash floods that go through and do damage to infrastructure and whatnot. So it's important for us to manage these watersheds wherever we can.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Jensen.
Madam
I'll have.
Chair, a couple people have had their hands up.
Okay, yeah, I'm not seeing it in the side, but I do believe that we received other people that came on. So I'd like to now offer the floor to Mr. Stenogestein, chairperson of, I believe, the Veterans Commission. Were you here to testify on behalf of Bill 20 and 21-36?
Madam, no, I'm here for Bill 188-36.
And we also have Acting Director Angie Camacho. Were you here to testify for Bill 20 or 21-36?
No, Senator. I'm here to testify. Well, not here to testify, but with our chairman, he will speak on behalf of Bill 188-36.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you too.
So now I guess I would like to open the floor to my colleagues.
Madam Chair, if I may, Mr. Camacho had his hand up, and I believe Ms. Mendiola had her hand up too. I can see it on my end. I don't think you can see it on your end, but.
Okay. Is it additional testimony? Because yeah, if you can send the questions on the chat, I appreciate that.
Well, I just wanted to add clarification to my recommendation, ma'am, if you don't mind. Regarding my my request to include the conservation districts, and I guess I need to explain why, because the lengthy explanation given by BSP really didn't get to the gist of my question, maybe to yours, but I think the districts is an integral component because it's part of their mandate as found in 5 GCA Chapter 63, soil and water conservation, and I think they need to be part of the decision-making process and the planning process at every step of the way. And I think it's time for our government, Madam Chair, that we start to include the community that is directly engaged with the resources or the activity that we are proposing to change. And I think this would make a world of difference in terms of whether you get support or you don't get support of the bill. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Camacho. So Melanie Mendiola, if you can turn on your video, were you interested in providing any testimony?
Hi, Hafide. This is Jennifer sitting in for Mel. She is in another meeting, but will be providing testimony relative to Bill 188-36.
Okay, all right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so now I would like to open up the floor to my colleagues for any questions. Oh wait, sorry, we have a hand up. I know Mr. Nelson, you were trying to get on, but I believe there are audio difficulties. Is your audio working right now? You can say something. Okay, it looks like we're still working out the issues. Yeah, so we appreciate if you can send in testimony in case the audio continues not to work. All right, so if we can continue with the line of questioning from my colleagues, I'd like to recognize Senator Terlaje if she has any questions or comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to everyone that came to testify today. Thank you for being here and providing your input. It's very important we hear from not only the public, but the agencies that are involved. And I am, Madam Chair, I wonder if we had the opportunity to invite Department of Parks and Rec, if they had the opportunity to be here, and were they given notice of this public hearing?
I'm looking over my notes. I don't see any indication yet, but we can definitely reach out to them. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's very important considering the property right now, according to what was said earlier, that it is under the agency of the Department of Parks and Recs that's currently overseeing this. In fact, Mr. Borja, Department of Land Management, you mentioned earlier about this property and how certain agencies were not given land, and they were all, brought together and given certain parcels of property. Is this pertaining to the executive order of the Guam Territorial Sea Park? Is that what you were alluding to as far as this collaboration of agencies such as Department of Ag, as well as I think it was, who are the other agencies that you mentioned? Land Management and Guam EPA.
Madam Chair, is that question directed to me?
Yes, Mr. Borja. It pertains to Executive Order 78-42 as well as 78-43, which I believe this property is in the vicinity of what's called the Territorial Sea Park, and that was formulated. And I think this is what we were alluding to earlier with respect to this property is under the jurisdiction of Parks and Rec.
No, these properties I'm alluding to Public Law 2218, where these three agencies were not given any acreage of land under Public Law 2218, but they were directed to work together to develop the master plan. So I wasn't alluding to any executive order. I was alluding to Public Law 2218. These lots were the result of a requirement under Public Law 2218 that these three agencies, not including EPA, it was Parks and Rec, Agriculture, and Land Management, get together and develop a master plan and then get the concurrence of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. And that's where these lots came from, not from an executive order.
And is the property under the jurisdiction of the Department of Parks and Rec right now? Because it's not under Chamorro Land Trust, correct?
It's in the master plan. No, it's not under Chamorro Land Trust.
Is it under the jurisdiction, because it's not under Chamorro Land Trust, it should be under a certain agency. Is it under Department of Parks and Rec?
Under the master plan, yes.
Okay, so it does, then that's why, Madam Chair, I was hoping to have Department of Parks and Rec, because if you look at these executive orders 78-42 and 78-43, it provides the ability for Parks and Rec to obtain any kind of grants, technical grants, resource grants from the US DOI and NOAA. So them not being here to provide testimony with respect to that, and knowingly that this property that was given to them under their jurisdiction and recognized, if I'm not mistaken, it's also recognized under the U.S. Department of Interior and National Park Service, Soil Conservation Services, and other Insular Affairs Office. So, I definitely don't stand in the way of with the intention of Department of Ag especially if they have their Forest Act plan already put into place. And I think it's important that we just address, what other agency is going to lose, in order to another agency to gain, because I know this is going to assist Parks and Rec, assist Department of Agriculture, especially when it comes to grants, to provide the funding to any kind of plan that they have in front of them. So that's just one of my concerns. This bill is basically the same bill that was introduced in the 35th Public Law, Bill 292 and 291. And there were questions that were asked. I was hoping, Chelsea, that one of the questions I asked of the square footage, how much acreage is that? And you kind of laughed because I reviewed the tape that you weren't quite sure, but are you now aware of how much acreage this area that you're asking for?
Sorry, Senator. I
No.
have it in a spreadsheet that we have. I can pull that up for you. Well, thank you for your bringing up Parks and Rec. I'm not sure if they submitted it already, but I know they were preparing a letter of support. And they were included when we had the Forest Summit meeting as well. And I know that they were also in support at that time when we spoke about these two laws in the process. I believe the Director Alcantara attended the meetings with us. For lot 507, it's 1,361 acres. I think Christine just put that in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
And then for the other one, it's 384 acres.
Okay. And Chelsea, since I have
384, sorry.
384.
0.43.
Okay, thank you. Chelsea, the Forest Act plan that you said was already implemented, not implemented, but finalized, I guess.
Yes.
Is that on your website for the public to review?
Not at this time. I think it's pending final approval from U.S. Forest Service. Is that correct, Christine?
Apologies. I missed the question. Is it Forest Action Plan?
Yes, about posting it on our website.
We can. Sorry, I just have to figure out how to get it on the website. But the Forest Action Plan it's been approved. This is the 2020 to 2030 update. And let me see if I can drop it in this box too for all of you.
It's a huge document.
Yeah, putting it on your website would be very helpful, especially for the public, because they can't view this Zoom. Some of the individuals here are not able to go onto Zoom, but how are you going to implement from the Forest Action Plan that you have implement into this property that you want to obtain under your jurisdiction?
I think actually we may have a little bit of confusion here. The Forest Action Plan, there's the Forest System Plan required under the Forest Legacy Act. And then there's the Forest Action Plan, which is the guiding document for our federal funding for 10 years at a time with 5-year updates. So that I think we may have a little disconnect there. But the plan, if I do encourage community to read the Forest Action Plan, because it's the guiding document for the work that we are doing. And it even includes, Dr. Jensen would appreciate this too. It includes the watershed information, the sediment load. So if we're talking about areas to prioritize for work, this document prioritizes these sites based upon access to them and, hey, which river is dumping the most, which river is receiving the most sediment in the watershed, and what resources are downstream from that. That's all included in the Forest Action Plan. And so this is, I would like to say, the overarching document for how we steer forestry work. Forest System Plan is the inventory of the parcels, which will then come with the rules and the regulations to be more specific on specific sites. So I do encourage everybody to read the Forest Action Plan. We'll get this up on the website. I'll talk to OTAC if I can't get it up there myself.
That'd be very good information for the public to review. What is the anticipation, in fact, for this area that you would like to acquire? What is the plan in perspective to that?
So there are several priorities that are identified nationally and locally. And so where they marry, it'll be the reduction of fires. So conversion of fuels, in management speak, and that's the vegetation type. So taking invasive grasses and converting that to preferred native canopy, native tree species. This will enhance, when I wrote in my testimony, enhancing the potential eco-benefit. That's not only eco-benefit on the ecological scale, but also the community, our economy benefiting from growing native trees, importing less and harvesting locally. When we say importing less, that touches on savings on biosecurity, on, wow, that's like everything already. So biosecurity and creating more job opportunity locally. So for these particular sites, the Menel Watershed, which number was that? But anyway, Bolanos and Menel. So the Menel Watershed, we currently have a landscape scale restoration effort on only 100 acres. And the benefit here would be increased potential in fisheries because of the marine preserve down below. We are protecting fishing stock, and hopefully that overflow will be seen throughout the rest of Guam's waters. Reduction in flood potential in the village. The mayors alone can speak on how much personnel hours and possibly logged and unlogged hours that they spend on battling flooding and trenching within their villages to reduce the flood potential, and then the repairs after flooding, infrastructure damage. So there's so a lot of our work starts with the very basic vegetation conversion. That's where it starts. And from there, we keep fire numbers down, fire spread down, and as a benefit to all of that, cleaner water, retention of soil, better farming industry, because then farms all along that bottom of the watershed aren't at risk of having their precious soils wash away during the next flood. There's a lot happening if we're able to just get to the top and do the work and have it protected for the long haul.
Okay, thank you so much, Christine. And if you can provide us, what you can do is provide me your testimony, or Chelsea. I didn't receive a testimony from Department of Ag. If you want to put it on the chat, that'd be great. I'll download it from there on your testimonies. I checked the Google Drive. I didn't seem to find any testimonies from Department of Agriculture. Also, Christine, you're mentioning all what you're going to do, but is it in a plan format? Do you have it written down on what you're planning to do step by step with this property?
Well, the first step is the fact that we do have the ongoing landscape scale restoration project. So this was the first funded project, second funded project within the watershed. We have 2 plantations. And again, this is forestry working in piecemeal lots. When you look at the bigger picture, we were only gaining access via private landowners giving us jeep trail access to the government parcel. So the first site we ever did was a 17-acre footprint that expanded to 21. And now within the same watershed, the 100 acres. And this is a plan, because in order to secure the grant, we had to have the proposal put in place. Right. And
you share that?
So we had that.
Yeah, okay, that would be very good too. To share with us the plan that you have for this 1,361 acres, a plan in place. I mean, that would be very helpful to see what you have for that, and also with the 384 that you mentioned as well. So we can watch your progress, and see any way we can assist you in achieving your goal, the end goal result. So that's what so if you can send that too as well, I greatly appreciate it. Okay.
It's a larger scale, so it's going to take more. So, Tom Camacho had mentioned soil and water districts. For every step of the way, we have our committees, whether they're the Forest Stewardship Committee, the Urban and Community Forestry Committee, and Fire Committee. So that way people know it's not the brainchild of just, Christine Farron or Rudy Estoy, the one forester in this office. This is a collaborative effort with the goal to manage these resources effectively and to be successful with that, with the end goal of protection. So we can share, again, the Forest Action Plan, because this is the guiding document for how we're going to proceed and why we proceed in these steps.
Okay, thank you, Christine, and thank you, Madam Chair, and well, actually, one other thing from the map that was provided with the bill really doesn't show us exactly where this is located at. If there's any possibility we can get from land management, a better area view of where this property exactly is at, because if you look at it, you're just seeing a piece of paper with these cutouts, but it doesn't give you a, area of what we're looking at other than lines, and it's just not a very clear map of where the location is. So do you think we can get that?
If I may, like this week, I remember us trying to provide landmarks for people for these locations. Right. And the challenge is that when we go back to the remoteness in nature. So you're not going to see the Bolanos parcel from, you won't see it from the road, right? That's what made it so challenging. So all I kept saying was, you've got to go like way in there.
Well, Google Maps does a great, we
can clip that. We can take a photo like right here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Okay. Exactly. And that would help us really locate it. By the time we take this bill into the session floor, it makes it easier for everybody to know exactly where it's located. Save us time on the session floor and provide us that map for us so we can see it. Okay. Thank you so much again, Christine and Chelsea, and Dr. Jensen. Always a pleasure to have you here, as well as everyone who testified. Edwin, keep up the good work, Edwin. Thank you again, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you, Senator Tadegui. I'd like to recognize Senator Joanne Brown for any questions.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and certainly appreciate the dialogue that's happened this morning with regards to these conservation properties. But I did want to inquire, because I recognize that these are located in the southern part of our island. I believe there are more of these conservation properties that were set aside under the jurisdiction of Parks and Rec, and I wanted to clarify that of these other locations, because I do recall when I was working with the University in Soil and Water Conservation, we did meet with Parks and Recreation concerning some of these properties, particularly a lot in the back road to Anderson that was adjacent to one of the quarries, and their interest in wanting to be able to acquire that land to be able to quarry that area. So I just wanted to get clarification, because I don't believe these conservation properties are simply limited to the two bills that we have before us this morning. So if I can inquire, would agriculture know that, since Parks and Rec is not represented here this morning?
Thank you for your question, Senator Brown. We did discuss several conservation sites up north as well. The challenges that I think with one of the prime sites that we wanted to work with, there are land disputes that are ongoing. And that seems to be the case with much of the conservation land that is up north. I think one of the only ones that was free of any sort of land disputes or issues was Tagwak. Do you remember that, Christine? I'm sorry. Sorry, Senator Brown.
No problem. Does Christine want to respond, or?
I was concurring with the director. I think Tagwak was the one that was the most, what's the correct word here, available for moving forward with management efforts.
Okay, I just think it would be helpful. I mean, of course, we're addressing these two bills this morning and would focus on it, of course. But I think, Madam Chair, it would be helpful if further discussion does happen with regards to these other conservation properties. I mean, understandable if there are issues with regards to ownership, whatever the case may be. These areas were designated for this purpose quite some time ago. And overall, unfortunately, there's been very, very, very little engagement with regards to the government of Guam in actually managing or maintaining these properties for the purpose of which they were originally intended. Perhaps, having it under Parks and Rec may not have been the best avenue, primarily because that's one department, though I recognize there are a number of them in our government that have substantially decreased in size over the years, that make it very difficult for them with regards to very limited manpower resources to actually go out and manage or even be able on any regular basis to check or determine whether or not these properties are being used for their intended purpose or misuse. And I know in Northern Guam, there definitely has been that concern about misuse of these properties and other people coming in that are dumping or may actually be squatting on these properties. And I think that's something, Madam Chair, that I think further discussion on those other locations would be important to know so that we can recognize collectively as policymakers what those issues are, what actions, if any, are being taken, and then what role do we want to take with regards to moving forward? Because as we recognize, you know, conserving these areas, these properties in the future, to me, are going to be the most valuable properties we have on Guam. It's not our properties with our big hotels and skyscrapers and asphalt. It's going to be the natural resources that we actually have out there that are not adversely impacted by human presence. And so I'm very supportive of these bills. I recognize the need for it. I think the next level of discussion after this is how are we going to assist to further manage and provide resources to further manage these properties, because one is being able to get out there. They're not as easily accessible, but they need to be able to go on a regular basis, as we've discussed with maintaining the fishing preserves. We have to have personnel out there with some degree of consistency and accessibility to be able to go out there. And then even more importantly, many people on Guam have no idea that these properties were ever set aside for these purposes all those years ago. And I think it's important as a community that our community also be aware of it so that they can also assist. There's many more people that now are becoming more conscientious about the importance of protecting these resources, and certainly could assist in that process as well by being aware of where they're located and keeping an eye out to protect these areas. Because obviously we're very challenged as time moves on. And unfortunately, there are members of our community that are not as responsible, not as caring, not as concerned, and would take advantage of these properties. And I think we can't just simply put it aside in writing, as we've done for all these many years. I mean, we need to actually be engaged and provide the resources. If we're going to transfer it to agriculture, I think it's a good thing that they will have the interest in wanting to protect it, but without the resource to do so, as we're seeing with the marine preserves, they do their very best, but they're very limited in resources to be able to get out there and address actual, you know, protection and conservation of these properties. So I think if we're really serious about this, this is an important step in the transfer to agriculture. But again, Madam Chair, I'd like to push very much that we need to have further discussion. It could be a roundtable, whatever the case may be, to get updated on these other properties. And certainly we have, you know, our Director of Land Management could also maybe assist us to give us some information with regards to those properties. But because the threats are even greater in Northern Guam because of these combined issues, I think we need to know on where things are at and then maybe make decisions on how do we move forward so that they don't get left behind because there's issues of conflict, particularly with regards to if we're going to really, you know, go and do beyond just writing bills and passing them into law and let them sit and collect dust. If we really want real engagement to make sure that these properties are actually operated for their intended purpose, I think we need to bring those issues to light and address them. With that, I appreciate the opportunity for everyone to provide input. I love hearing all this discussion. It's like, wow, this is nice to hear that this is part of their world that we get to deal with. And there's more discussion, concern, and engagement with regards to protecting what we've inherited. And more the reason we need to, because the challenges for the future are even far greater. So with that, thank you for everyone that's testified. And thank you very much, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to comment with regards to these bills.
Great. Thank you so much, Senator Brown. So we now have the audio working for Mr. Ted Nelson. Yeah, sincere apologies for any kind of technical difficulties. We'd like to recognize you to provide testimony at this time. If you can unmute yourself. Please unmute first. Yeah, you're still unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you clearly.
Yeah, I'm sorry for late, and I missed a lot of it, but you know, in the past we went through this, and Senator Brown's right. There's a lot of issues, and a lot of this pertaining as far as the government getting so involved, and too many competing internal forces, and like Dr. Jensen said, you know, I don't. It might go back to the days when they tried in the past to do a slaughterhouse. My question is, you know, in the States, if you go to a lot of states and they follow all federal guidelines, even their local governments, rules and regulations pertaining to have a slaughterhouse, inclusive of mobile slaughterhouses too.
Uh,
Why can't they, why not give the opportunity to private individuals or people related to
Excuse me, we're hearing testimony on Bill 20 and 21 at this time.
yeah, that's for the government land for the slaughterhouse and all that.
Oh, no, this is for the transfer of land for conservation. So Bill, we're still, we haven't yet gotten to that part of the.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear the first of it because I was just text that they were talking about the slaughterhouse.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I just got into it. My apology.
No worries. Yeah, so we'll
I thought that's all that conservation was pertaining, building up to what the earlier testimonies were in reference to the slaughterhouse and getting more land from the government to designate for conservation and also whatever you guys gonna do for ag.
Yeah, so if you can just hold on a minute while we
I'm sorry.
Testimonies for these two bills. Okay.
Madam Chair, I have something that maybe can help with Senator Brown's comments, if that's okay.
Yes, yeah, please, if you would like to add to any response.
Yeah, so I just want to acknowledge the good work that Senator Brown has done to really advance conservation. And in terms of specific identification of those lands in the northern limestone area, we have identified lots in the Ano conservation area, as well as lots that extend downward down into the Pagat area. So those lots have been identified in which Parks and Recs was in attendance at our land summit. And so you'll see a very, very comprehensive list brought before you through the forest system plan, which is inclusive of 249 different lots. And so we think that this inventory of lands will serve as useful in terms of meeting the Guam forest system. And I can confidently say that those lands that you identified up north, Senator Brown, is in this list. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Regis. All right, so yeah, there was a bill that I introduced last year. I think we identified one of them, so it's probably worth reintroducing. Okay, so moving on to the next senator, Senator Tony Atta, if you have any questions or comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Questions were asked and answered. I'd just like to thank everyone for coming here to testify on the two bills, and we look forward to having it brought forward to the floor. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Massey. So Senator Ridgell, do you have any, I'm sorry, maybe I should recognize the speaker. I know she was, I'd like to recognize the speaker if she has any.
Yes, thank you very much, Senator. Thank you all for your testimony. And, you know, we did have a hearing on these similar bills in the last term, but we were waiting for the forestry plan to be completed. And I just want to clarify with Mr. Regis from Guam Coastal Management. The plan, I mean, I did attend part of the summit, which was excellent, as the Director Chelsea stated earlier. But, you know, one of the questions that I kept raising there individually, especially with the Department of Parks and Rec, is if they have no objection to the properties being listed as part of the forestry plan, then does that mean that they are willing to give up their jurisdiction? And they said, they weren't giving up their jurisdiction, they were going to share jurisdiction. And you know, what you said this morning sounds different. So I just want to be clear, you know, well, by the plan, you would designate, when you make your list of properties in the plan, it sounds to me like, you know, nothing actually shifts jurisdiction, but these properties will be able to be utilized by the Department of Agriculture for the forestry purposes, right? But this bill is different. These two bills are different because we're by law transferring jurisdiction to the Department of Agriculture exclusively, and not anymore allowing some kind of shared jurisdiction with the Department of Parks and Rec. That's my understanding. Is that correct, Mr. Regis?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. So that is also my understanding in terms of the ownership of this property. I think certainly that is a legal question, and I'm not a lawyer, so I wouldn't my opinion on this is that it does provide the administrative framework where Department of Agriculture will be able to act and commit resources and to take any type of actions that an owner would have with these two particular bills. The difference with the Guam Forest System Plan is it doesn't explicitly state that transfer of ownership. It does explicitly state that the jurisdiction will fall under the Department of Agriculture. So there is a little bit of, I think, things that we need to work through in terms of the Guam Forest System Plan and what that established in terms of ownership. I personally think, professionally think that although the Guam Forest System Plan references that these lands are under the jurisdiction of agriculture, there are other provisions in the law that calls for things like developing a memorandum of agreements and so forth. Yes. So I think the Forest System Plan really is the framework for one, identifying the properties, identifying that these limitations and these constraints must be geared towards forest enhancement, but doesn't necessarily transfer those properties, those 249 lots to the Department of Agriculture.
All right, yeah, which I support. The transfer is what I'm, of course, a little bit more cautious about, and that's because it becomes exclusive. And then the mandate on Parks and Rec, although it's understaffed right now, they still have a mandate to create these park systems for the people's uses. And I know that in my discussions with the Department of Ag that they have claimed that they will also make those uses available, but then it becomes, I guess we need to see the details of the plan and the details of the rules and regs that come after the plan, or the particular rules that are going to be put into place for these particular properties. And the reason why I'm concerned about these properties is because this is this is 1,000 acres, over 1,000 acres of property that we're talking about. It's huge, it's massive. It goes, I think, from the border of the Naval Mag all the way to MERIZO and INARAJAN, TALOFOFO. And so this is a very large piece of property. I think because it's government owned, it's traditionally used by the people of these villages for their hunting and other recreation. And I just, of course, want to ensure that they are aware of what is planned for these properties and if, or how their use of the properties will be restricted. I wanted to also ask, okay, so Director Munya Brett, I know you talked about you have funding, and the reason why these two properties are lined up, prioritized over other properties, which might be even more important for conservation. These two properties are put into, we have bills on these two properties because these were, you said, the low-hanging fruit, easy, very few other impediments to obtaining jurisdiction. But also, I think because you have $2 million in funding lined up for these particular properties. And so this is REPI funding. Can you just remind me what REPI stands for? I know they said it earlier. This is like you said, JRM funded, right?
Yes, readiness and environmental protection. Let me see what's the other I. Integration program.
Okay, and so I think, when they discussed the REPI funding, they said it's only going to cover a portion of these properties, not all of the ones that are covered in these bills, but that, so I just want to know, does it cover only the properties that are bordering the Department of Defense properties?
Absolutely not.
So the REPI funding also covers what other properties that, like Menel, is not bordering on Department of Defense?
Yes, and I wanted to clarify, although we're in the beginning stages of developing the plan for how REPI funding will be expended, because these properties are not under Department of Ag administration right now or jurisdiction, we can't include them just yet either. the ability to utilize these fundings for conservation on these properties will be dependent on whether or not the department has jurisdiction or administrative authority over those properties. So we're actually limited right now in the amount of different, or in the property areas that we're able to work with because of that. And the funding, I believe, also has increased upwards from $2 million at this time in the amount of time that's lapsed since we were first awarded.
All right, but yeah, my understanding was that you had already signed an agreement. I remember we went through this at the last hearing. There was already a signed agreement by you and others regarding this property and with JRM. And
yes.
So, yeah, what restrictions would it's kind of like instead of entering into an MOA with Department of Parks and Rec, you're entering into one with JRM. Would receiving that funding restrict your use of the property or our use as the people of Guam's use of the property?
No, I mean, do you mean in terms, no, that's not how it would work. But we identified this property, these two properties as potential sites. And that was, the caveat was that we would end up having administrative authority by the time we start expending the property or finalize the plan for implementation. And JRM does not have a say about how the property is utilized. That would be the Department of Agriculture with other GovGuam agencies and stakeholder partners like the districts that would identify how those properties would be used. And there's never been a discussion on the table at all at any point about limiting community access for hunting or for any other purposes. If anything, the entire conversations have been centered on how we can augment these areas or restore these areas to benefit the community and for community use. Like you mentioned, incorporating recreational activities into the areas, using them for educational purposes, like identifying areas that we would enhance to establish like areas for educational research studies for students, to make safer access for the community. Those have all been the uses that we focus on. And none of it has been about restricting.
The REPI doesn't have priorities. For example, it's not trying to like fire prevention, as was stated. There were some nationwide priorities for fire prevention. Are there any other goals that are for
the fire prevention was on our end, but the purpose of the REPI funding is to restore habitat. It's to restore critical habitat for either endangered or listed species.
Okay. All right. Well, I do appreciate all your work on this and your plans. I know there are many properties on Guam that could benefit from your management, and you are doing good work. I would like to, though, my biggest concern is that I want the people of MERIZO, UMATAC, INARAJAN, TALOFOFO, that's how far these properties extend to really know the impacts of this. And I know Senator Perez has maps ready. If we could just show those Google maps so that we can get a good idea of really the expanse of the property we're talking about under these two bills. I'll leave that to you, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Speaker. So this, I guess this is Google map of the, it doesn't, I think it includes for the bill, 21-36, I believe. So let me see. We don't have any delineation, but it encompasses a large expanse. I think, as the speaker said, it probably very close to the property of the military that's controlled by the military. And maybe Director Chelsea, if you can speak to, is this a landlocked area for the most part, or does it reach to, what's the access to this area?
I believe it right now, and Christine can speak to this better, but I believe right now, one of the only points of access is behind private property. It is landlocked areas.
Okay, so maybe Christine, if you can give us a little bit of description of the area and maybe outline, give us a little. boundary?
Hard on the spot. I'm trying to look at some of my other maps that I have here. But for Bolanos, so the area that we're actually focusing on right now, it's going to kind of cover the Bolanos area, the Bolanos site. And the access to this is through Babulao. So if you were to hike from like Naval Mag and just keep going, you'll eventually hit this. If you're off Dandan Road in Malolo, you would take trails to get all the way in here. So you're cutting through Babulao to get to Bolanos. And then you can even access from Mount Schroeder. It's like if you go all the way up the ridge and then hike all the way in. That's why, like, as far as like pinpointing it for anyone who's never been out to the sites, that's a challenge. I don't know. Wow.
Madam Speaker, Madam Chair, I have a map on my screen if I can get sharing permission.
Okay, that'd be great. So yeah, thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, topographically also, I believe it's the higher elevation of the watershed. Is that correct, Christine?
Okay.
Sorry.
I don't know if you guys can see my screen, but it should be showing. So
Yes.
Bolanos Conservation Area should be the polygon on the southern area of Guam, and it should have the labels right on top of it.
All right. And so the relationship to the Ugam watershed, do you know the distance to that?
So hang on, I can turn on watersheds, but I think it crosses over maybe 6 watersheds.
Okay, and is this the upper elevation of the watershed? The height? Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I need to do some work to properly overlay the watersheds, but it's about 7 or 8 watersheds it extends into.
And would you say this is more of the upper part of the watershed?
Yeah, this is the upper extent of the watershed, yes.
All right, so yeah, it looks like the vegetation looks okay, but yeah, as you know, the upper part of the watersheds are very critical if we're talking about prevention of erosion, and yeah, management is critical in the upper levels. Okay, and then in regards to for Bill 20-36, so we know that's the Menel Watershed. So do you have a map of that as well, Edwin?
I'm sorry, I don't.
Yeah, so my guess it's MERIZO Watershed.
It's gonna be that lower cup, like lower half where your hand is. Move it to the left a little bit, to the left a little bit more, right in there, and it goes up. So even when you're on Google, so you can see the burns, the fire to like above your hand. Here I am pointing with my mouse, and that doesn't help you guys. But basically on top of the experimental station, if you see the road to the IHA experimental station, that burn that you see the dark brown, that goes over down this ravine where all the green is, and cuts and burns right into the back of the plantation. So where your hand is the general location for our plantation. And again, it's only 100 acres. And so the effort to expand, let me say this, the fire breaks and the work that we've done, you can actually see the breaks. You can see it in that, the way it was angled. That effort actually stopped the fire's progression to the lower half of the community. And it turned the fire back into, back towards the mountain, towards the range, and away from the village. So your reforestation project, even at its 100-acre footprint, already was doing a major effort to divert a threat. And but that right there, that'll be the parcel going all the way back.
Okay, so Edwin, I noticed is that your cursor with the hand? So that's the location of the lot in question.
Edwin will know it well.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's really good to see the topography. Also, if you look for the Bolanos area that you highlighted in light green, yeah, it looks like it's the upper part of the watersheds, and it affects 7 different watersheds.
Yeah,
And
that's my latest count.
And I'll tell you this, like when you do review, and I was able to throw the forest action plan into the chat box. So like right away I opened up and I found high priority for TALOFOFO. So in the forest action plan, we have this which encompasses the Bolano site, rather what I'm looking at. It covers the fact that this was already identified as a priority area for forestry because of the public water supply areas. So the reforestation efforts, you want these where the potential draw on water will be, so we can protect that and hopefully save big money on the larger scale when we talk about infrastructure for water. Sorry, but the documents in there, if anybody wanted to take a look, the maps are a bit rough, but because they're very broad, but we can always take a closer look with GCMP's help with the GIS side.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Edwin.
Okay, I'm stopping my share screen.
Actually, Madam Chair, if I may, please.
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regards to the territorial Seashore Park, I don't know, Edwin, if you're familiar with that. That was created in 1978, basically given to these areas for Department of Parks and Rec. Can you also do an overlay to show that territorial Seashore Park, I'm sorry, on the map to show where they have Department of Parks and Recs have their property, or with their jurisdiction?
Yeah, I'm gonna need some time to get that on, but I think I did see the data layer on that, but I'll have to get back to you, but we can definitely work on it, Senator.
Okay, thank you. And if you can send it our way so we can see the difference between the overlay of what the territorial Seashore Park is and what the intended of this bill will do, and how much it'll take away from that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Titagui. So one more quick question. For the REPI funding, this question is for Director Chelsea. Is there enough property with this transfer to get funding for REPI? Your REPI.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to understand the question. So we've already obtained and been awarded REPI funding. We're in the process of establishing basically the work that will be done on specified sites, where the last meeting we had was to narrow down considerably, like the sizes or the properties that we would be working on. And then if we're able to achieve or demonstrate success with this initial funding, it provides us the opportunity to request for more funding and increases the likelihood that we'll be awarded more funding.
Okay, so.
And then we can identify more areas to increase or to start working on as well.
Okay, so it's regardless of whether the forestry system plan, it's regardless of what's enlisted in that plan. Is that correct? The receiving of funding is not necessarily tied to what's listed in the plan, the forestry system plan.
Yeah, yes, it's tied to what property will be under our administrative authority.
So it is tied to what's in the plan.
Well, there are properties that we already identified that we do have authority over that we can start working on. And so the answer is kind of like yes and no. Like if the property isn't identified in the forest system plan, but we already have administrative authority over it, then we can begin work on that. But if we also identify property in the plan that we have administrative authority over, then we can work on those properties as well.
Okay, so it's based on what's listed. Or is it based on what you hope to?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. All right. All right. So the plan is enough without the bill? to get the REPI funding?
We have the REPI funding, but it's just a matter of where we would be able to do work.
Okay, so
we need the bill to be able to do work in these areas.
So the funding you have received is for the land that's already under your jurisdiction.
And potentially these sites if we can include them.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right, thank you for the response. I think I would like to now offer the floor for closing to the author of the bill, Senator Ridgell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have much to say except just to, ask for support on these measures. These are big areas of land. I know I've been to both areas personally. My wife's from the village of Malesso, and my wife's family goes hunting in these areas or picking pugwa and things of that nature. So I definitely will not move the bills forward unless I can be assured or unless I can make certain that public access is not impeded to these areas. And I've been told by both the director of agriculture as well as from the forestry division that that's not the intent at all. And if I have to, I would include some sort of amendment to the measure to ensure that public access isn't impeded, because definitely I'll be the first one to hear it from my nyao if he can't hunt in Bolanos anymore. So that's definitely something I want to ensure, that the access is not impeded in those areas. These areas are deep inland, as Mrs. Farron mentioned and others have mentioned. They're not easily accessible, and it's not for the faint of heart. If you're gonna hike in there, this is rough terrain to hike into. You're going over mountains, down into gullies and valleys, over hills, through thick sword grass, thick sakati. It's not easy landscape to get into. So really the people who use it primarily are those who like to go hiking and those who like to go hunting or harvesting other things from the jungle. So I do want to ensure that that access is not in any way impeded. And I've been told that that's not the intent at all. But if we have to, I'm willing to put in an amendment to ensure that. In addition to that, I know there's a request made to ensure that the Southern Soil and Water Conservation District is included in any of the planning. If that needs to be added as an amendment, I'm open to that as well. I definitely want the Southern Soil Water Conservation Districts to be involved. And I like everyone to be involved in the planning and in the use of this land and the preservation and conservation of this land. So with that, I ask my colleagues for their support, and I'd like to thank everyone who came out to testify this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ridgell. And so we'll definitely be following up with any of the questions that were posed and Department of Parks and Rec too as well. And I do believe, Chelsea too, there was in the previous public hearing that we had for this bill last term, there was questions about mitigation, and just wanted to make sure that, these areas are not used for mitigation purposes. All right, thank you so much. Okay, we're gonna move on to the third item of the agenda. It's bill number 188-36 COR, sponsored by Senator Clynton Ridgell. Is an act to transfer lot number 7150R4, new 1-1 from the Tribal Land Trust Commission to the Department of Ag for the purpose of establishing a slaughterhouse and providing up to $3 million in financial assistance. We'd like to now offer the floor to the author of the bill to provide any introduction. Senator Ridgell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bill number 88-36 COR is aimed at the development of a USDA certified slaughterhouse on Guam. Meat from local livestock cannot currently be sold in Guam stores or restaurants because there is no USDA certified slaughterhouse. Instead, local ranchers can only sell live animals or slaughter animals for their personal consumption. This bill identifies $3 million in funding to be used for the construction of a slaughterhouse, and it directs the Department of Agriculture and the Guam Economic Development Authority to work together to develop an RFP for some form of public-private partnership for the construction and operation of the slaughterhouse. An existing law that was passed years ago already identified a parcel of Gov Guam land for a slaughterhouse. This lot has sat idle since then. The lot, from our understanding, is still available, and Bill number 188-36 COR will transfer administrative jurisdiction of this piece of land to the Department of Agriculture for the purpose of establishing a slaughterhouse. I ask my colleagues to support this initiative so we can jumpstart this process and finally have some local meat sold in our stores and in our restaurants here on Guam. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Senator Ridgell. We'd like to invite people to testify on behalf of this bill. So initially, Chairperson John Reyes was present, but he could not make it. So we have Angie Camacho from the Chamorro Land Trust to provide testimony on his behalf, on the commission's behalf, I should say. So you're recognized, Angie.
I'll be reading Chairman's testimony for today. Good morning, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture, Senador Siha, Gimenan 36, na Legislaturan Guahan, and everyone joining us today. My name is John Reyes Jr., Chairman of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, and I thank you for the opportunity to participate in today's public hearing. I am here to provide input on Bill 188-36, an act to transfer lot number 7150-R-4-new-1-1 from the Chamorro Land Trust Commission to the Department of Agriculture for the purpose of establishing a slaughterhouse and those providing up to $3 million in financial assistance. In discussions with our acting administrative director, Ms. Angie Camacho, and our program coordinator, Mr. Joey Cruz, we are in support of the theory of a slaughterhouse and expansion of the industry to our food supply chain and economy, but unleashes a slew of questions, starting with the environmental concerns. Do we want a slaughterhouse located over our aquifer? Is the processing or pre-processing facility, is this a processing or pre-processing facility or both? To expand the leakage potential in both process is high, and how would it be contained to not have negative impact to our northern aquifers? Is there sufficient infrastructure to support this type of facility? Is 2 acres sufficient to support this type of industry, or future needs and scalability for expansion? Is this the best location from an EPA and public health perspective? How do we ensure that these types of permitting is part of the conditions of the lease? Although this is primarily agriculture, there are currently 4 ag leases with residences and residential lots in the surrounding areas. So the smell would be a nuisance, any water runoff and other things that happen at a slaughterhouse. We have economic concerns. It appears that there are some contradictions in the provision of section 6910 of chapter 3, title 5, Guam Code Annotated, as appears to the administrative jurisdiction of the lot and the bill. This section is authorizing the transfer of the property from CLTC with the rent at $1 per year, but the bill indicates that there will be an RFP process and at fair market value. Clarity on what type of lease this will be, agriculture or commercial. Commercial leases should yield commercial rates. There is no explicit term or length of time for when the facility will be constructed or operational before it will be deemed not used as intended, quote unquote. The lease term is 50 years. I'd expect something in 3 to 5 years, not year 45. And lastly, the concerns of the perception that there will be doling out land by transferring a piece of property to another agency as quickly as passing a bill when we've struggled for so many years to ratify new leases for our constituents. Siduos Ma'asi for the time and opportunity to testify today.
This is Mossy, Ms. Angie. So for your testimony, or for the Chamorro Land Trust testimony, we'd like to now recognize Christine Camacho Bejarin, also from the Forestry Division, Guam Department of Ag, for your testimony. Are you signed up for the?
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I didn't have a statement prepared for this bill. I'm just following along.
Okay. How about Director Chelsea Money-Breck? Were you interested in providing testimony on behalf of the Department of Ag?
Yes, but can we see if Mr. Borja wanted to provide any testimony? He's our Chief of Agriculture Development Services.
Okay, so, all right, thank you. So Mr. Borja, would you like to present oral testimony at this time?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to make a brief testimony in support of it. Any kind of support to the agriculture industry. The livestock facility has been a long-awaited prospect. I've been on 4 task forces in the past 3 generations or decades of people trying to raise livestock and the support of growing for subsistence, food security, and for the future needs of the island for that purpose. Unfortunately, with those 3 task forces I'm on, there were many challenges. And land resources was one of the big challenges to identify. We did come across having to come to a sort of like understanding as to how to run management for waste products for the actual facility. And the closest area that we all in the past task forces agreed upon was closer to a infrastructure like a sewer line or to a roadway where electricity can be provided. So some of the areas that was long been seen as a potential had a lot more challenges than the area that has been proposed in this bill. And that will give us a more of an edge to be efficiently able to support an industry that long has been awaited by farmers, a age of farmers that are gradually disappearing. But it also gives a momentum for the potential for new livestock producers, new generation. And I'm seeing a lot of interest of the growing need for a livestock slaughterhouse. So it may not be on that property itself, but I would like to thank again the committee, Madam Chair and Senator Ridgell, for having put again on the table the same discussion and effort and the prospect of a slaughterhouse possibility to happen in the future. So again, I'm all in favor for any kind of support that anyone can give for this purpose to have a slaughterhouse built for the island, for the people community. We are very, very challenged now in these tiring times of the COVID, as well as being so isolated. We need to understand it's very vital. We will not try to revisit ourselves back again. We gotta move forward. We gotta make the challenges happen and make it happen for the benefit of the island. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Borja. So I'd like to recognize Dr. John Jensen. We have you signed up to testify. You're recognized.
I'm sorry, I'm a little slow with the mute button. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know exactly where the planned location is, but of course, anytime something goes over the aquifer, that could produce a substantial amount of waste. Often, we obviously need to have that controlled, and I don't know what has been planned so far, but obviously there should be planning involving Guam EPA and GWA. But the waste that's produced by a slaughterhouse is, comparable to, when it breaks down, it's comparable to sewage. So it should be handled so that we don't get bacterial contamination or nitrate contributed to the aquifer. And I'm sure we've got standards for those, and it's just a matter, I would expect, of enlisting all the appropriate agencies to work together to make sure that the existing standards are followed.
Thank you. Does that conclude your testimony, Dr. Jensen?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Right.
Unless you've got any questions that I can answer, I need to know more about the actual location to comment on the precise vulnerability. You know, if it's next to a big sinkhole or something like that, and there's going to be a reservoir that stuff is kept in, you know, those are considerations. But again, I think we have experts on the island, and if this were handled by one of our local engineering firms to do the right design for it and that sort of thing, I think we'd be in good shape. And of course, WERI's always here to help.
Okay, well, thank you. I will definitely check with the staff to see if we have a ready-made map to show the property. So yeah, we could stay on for any questions later on. We appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So we'd like to recognize the next person on the list is Melanie Mendiola, Administrator of the Guam Economic Development Authority, to provide testimony. Welcome, Melanie.
Hafidane, good morning, everyone. Hafidane, Speaker, Chair, Co-Chair, and members of the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture. And thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on Bill 188-36. GIDA supports the bill. The expansion of the agriculture industry is one of, and for the record, my name is Melanie Mendiola. I'm the CEO Administrator of the Guam Economic Development Authority. So the expansion of the agriculture industry is one of the key components of Governor Lulian Guerrero's economic diversification plan. The development of a commercial slaughterhouse presents an opportunity to establish a more robust and sustainable agriculture industry, which in turn will provide opportunities for new employment and additional investment. GIDA wholeheartedly supports any initiative that will bring sustainable and responsible economic development to Guam. We have many years of experience in leasing and management of government real property. In addition, we have a very constructive partnership with both the CLTC and the Department of Agriculture. Bill 188 provides a mechanism for the CLTC to generate some much needed revenue while simultaneously providing the Department of Agriculture a way to move forward with their goals of establishing a commercial slaughterhouse in Guam. If it is the will of the legislature, with the CLTC and the Department of Ag, GIDA stands ready to assist both organizations as indicated in Bill 188. I do want to note that we do currently have an MOU with CLTC to provide services to assist with land leasing. However, this is not one of the properties designated for GIDA to work on. So if they did want us to work on this property, it would just need to be added through board action. Lastly, Bill 188 indicates that the operator of a slaughter may be eligible to apply for and receive tax benefits under the qualifying certificate program. And rest assured that if and when such an operator comes to Guam, GIDA will ensure that they are informed of the QC program and its requirements. Thank you for your time and attention. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mendiola. I'd like to now recognize Director Joe Borja, Department of Land Management. Hi, Director, sorry, would you be able to provide testimony at this time regarding Bill 188?
I actually submitted testimony, written testimony, and an aerial photograph of the map. I'm not sure what questions the panel might have, but I'm certainly open to questions that they may have.
Okay, so maybe now's a good time to show the map of the area to give the audience a better idea, so we can have the staff show it. Give us one moment. think they're queuing it. Let's see. Okay, maybe we can get that ready. So yeah, it was some information is coming through saying it's the property across Anderson, across from the gate of Anderson Air Force Base. But we'll have the map ready. What I'd like to do is now allow others who have come in to testify. So while we're preparing the map for the audience to see, we have Joe San Agustin, Chair of the Guam Veterans Affairs. So we'd like to recognize you for your testimony. Mr. San Agustin. You're unmuted, but we can't quite hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Thank you. Yeah, please proceed.
Go ahead. First of all, thank you for this Zoom testify on behalf of senators.
Sorry, Mr. San Agustin, if you can speak closer. Sorry, if you can speak closer to the microphone. You're coming in and out. You're cutting in and out.
I apologize for that. Can you hear me?
Yes, much better. Much better. Thank you.
Okay. So, you know, I kudos for the movement on the initiative to actually have our very own slaughterhouse here in Guam. But I do have several questions. I do have like 7 concerns, a small number of it. But also before I begin, I just want to thank Mr. Ridgell and Angelita, CLT, they're actually coming right up and saying, do we want a slaughterhouse on top of the aquifer? And is 2 acres feasible? And I, you know, if you ask me, because I'm a commercial, you know, somewhat a pretty high level farmer here in Ridgell, my answer right now to this bill will be no. Let's put it on cease. Because if we're trying to do something here, compromising the integrity of our water source, then we're pretty much in the wrong start. We're on the wrong track. You know, a 2-acre land for a slaughterhouse. So I think it'll be smart for us to plan, do more planning and do more consideration for an expansion of a slaughterhouse in the future. So we have 50 years. You know, we can the population is going to grow. I think we should not go backwards and focus forward and saying, let's make this happen, because this had happened 30 years ago with my dad and other hardcore farmers from north to south, and it was failed. It was failed because the government or whoever it might be that was involved did not educate them on the pros and cons, and they were trying to do their best. That's the farmers to provide food for the island. So in saying this, I am putting my hand in and putting myself in a position where I would like to help move this bill forward, but in a more reasonable fashion. And it being on the aquifer and 2 acres is not enough. So here's some of my points. Has a feasibility study been done in this location? And when was it done? Because right now, even if it's done, me knowing that it's on top of an aquifer, it's not good enough. What type of infrastructure? And if this is in reality the direct front from the main gate of Anderson Air Force Base, I think that's where the initial 30-year ago slaughterhouse was initially planned that failed. The intended slaughterhouse that we're thinking about on this 2 acre, like I just mentioned, is good enough for a mobile slaughter. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to plan to be able to expand if we want this to succeed. Because right now we're half stepping. And I must apologize because I'm listening to all the duties and responsibilities that's happening with the Department of Ag. Ladies and gentlemen, you all have your hands full. You all have your hands full. And I applaud you all for the great job that you all are doing. But you all actually need more help because there's a lot of things that we start off from the get-go wanting to make it good, and halfway through, and we know this. Halfway through, that was it. We give up because we can move it forward because restrictions came about or other things came about in the middle of that great thing that we wanted to do. So here's the other one. Is there any future plan to building or expanding more businesses or residential within that area that we intend or you intend to build a slaughterhouse? Because that's important. If we did not do a study thinking that in the future there's going to be residential areas built next to it, I could tell you that the chicken farm that was up here about 40 years ago, that was located in an area where it's supposed to be a farm, and Mr. Borja knows about this. It's supposed to be a farming community. The reason why that chicken farm went down was the neighbors, that our farmers were complaining because of the smell. So let's not fail each other and let's not fail the people. And I hope that makes sense because I know that for a fact that that's what happened. And now that area is being used for, garden and green plants and all that good stuff. And the reason I brought this up because, is there any future plan of any of those buildings that will hamper our operation? Think about it. We have 50 years. And within 25 years, if there's going to be growth around there, that slaughterhouse will cease because we're going to get complaints. Now, the operation, the vehicles going in and out, the amount of activities happening, and comes to find out, well, by the way, going down into the aquifer, it's not a good idea. This is probably why, I'm getting all these rats because the water I'm drinking is coming from all that stuff and waste that's going down the aquifer. For the Department of Ag, do we have a list of livestock producers to sustain the operation of the slaughterhouse? And I say this because sometimes we think, well, there's a lot of wild pigs and wild pigs. I'll tell you what, nowadays, not too many people who eat wild pigs unless it's raised. So to move this forward in a very wise, smart direction, it's wise to find out how many livestock producers are interested in supporting this slaughterhouse, or else it's not going to happen. We're going to spend money. We're going to bring somebody in, pay them $3.3 million to manage a slaughterhouse from outside of wherever they be, and I'm hoping it's here in Guam. And so that to replenish that stock, are we prepared for that? Because I'm looking, and I apologize because I haven't visited the Department of Ag for quite some time, but I'll tell you, when you slaughter 200 today and plan to slaughter another 200 next week, you don't have enough stock. How is it going to be dual or single? Because if we plan to just do a slaughterhouse that's only for pigs, well, I raise cows too and goats, and a whole bunch of ducks. So all those are marketable. Let's not limit ourselves to the vision of we just want a slaughterhouse because we want to make it happen. Please think about that. And chickens, right? So in closing, I don't want us to have step, and I'll tell you, I will love to support the bill, and thank you for the office for bringing this up. But at this time, knowing the real estate available and the location where it's going to take place, and knowing the amount of work from the two bills that I just heard that the Department of Ag is engaged with, I cannot support this bill in its form at this time. I thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you, Mr. San Agustin. Just to be clear, are you presenting testimony on behalf of the Veterans Affairs, or this is a personal testimony?
So hopefully one of these days I'll get veterans to be farmers, but at this time, I am sponsoring myself as a personal, but also I'm part of a livestock cooperative steering committee here in Guam that we just stood up a couple of days ago, and I think it'd be smart if we partner up with this association so that we could actually make things happen. Oh yeah, and one more. One more, and I apologize. If we were going to bring somebody in to manage that $3 million that's going to make this slaughterhouse a reality, we want to make sure that we're good at it, that the money stays here in Guam and doesn't go elsewhere, because we need it here, and we worked so hard to get to this point. So I just thought I'd put that in because I'll tell you what, it's been known, and many of y'all know about this. Good collaboration. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. San Agustin. If you can also provide a written testimony, some of the, it was difficult to hear in some portions of your oral testimony, so we appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now I'd like to recognize Mr. Tom Camacho to provide testimony for Bill 188.
Thank you very much. And you know I'm a talker, so I'll try to keep my comments to the point and very short as much as I humanly can. First of all, my name is Thomas Camacho. I'm a farmer. I'm a resident of Sinahaña, resident of Guam. And I am also the founder of the Farmers Cooperative Association of Guam. I am a former 17-year director with the USDA Farm Service Agency. I was born farming and ranching. Ranching and farming put me and my sister and my siblings through Catholic education. And by the way, for the record, my sister is Angie Camacho at Land Trust. Anyways, Madam Chair, I just wanted to touch real quick on the bill and the merits of the bill. First and foremost, contrary to popular beliefs, I do applaud the senator for his initiative and his vision and foresight in regards to seeing that the community has the resources it needs. I totally agree. However, I don't agree with how the bill came about. Okay, and that basically means that I do not support the bill in its entirety, unfortunately. Madam Chair, I do agree with the retiring speakers, Ms. Camacho at the Land Trust and Dr. John Jensen with WERI. We do share the same concerns. And before I continue on my committee, just to touch a little bit on what the retiring speaker, Mr. San Agustin, had mentioned, this whole thing started with a group of people who came together at the request of the Farmers Co-op. And we started meeting, and it came to a point where we were at the planning stages, and the professionals that are in our group, which are USDA Food Safety Inspection Service, as well as USDA meat scientists, UOG's meat scientists, ranchers, farmers, piggery operators, all sit in this committee. It was brought to our attention during these meetings that we had that a mobile slaughterhouse is not the way to go. And it's insufficient. It's going to require a heck of a lot more money to complete, because one unit would not suffice. One unit will be only considered as a kill. I just wanted to also touch a little bit on one of the comments that were made by a retiring speaker, who is also the chief of the Division of Ag Development Service. 31 years, he's correct. 31 years, 3 bills. All those bills tasked the Department of Agriculture, more particularly the Ag Development Service, to shore up a slaughterhouse. 31 years, Madam Chair. Not a single thing has been done. Nothing. Okay. And the same individual that provided testimony today can attest to you that he was involved at every step of the way. 31 years. And we want to give the Department of Agriculture one more shot to get this thing going. I'm sorry, but for 31 years, the farmers and ranchers have been suffering, and nothing has been coming out of that department. Let's be real. Let's be real, please, for once. Okay, and you know, the intent of the bill is good, but I think the content of the bill is flawed. Okay, with regards to communities, you know, Joe is absolutely correct. We are a steering committee. We have formed a steering committee. We are at the verge, Madam Chair, to sign our corporate documents tonight. Come to find out yesterday that this bill was coming up for a hearing. We didn't know. Nobody invited us. Nobody told us. Nobody sent anything to us. And maybe they sent it to the farmers co-op, and I am the founder, but I still don't have information from them. There's something going on, and I don't like it. I honestly believe that this bill needs to stay in committee and needs to die in committee. I think there needs to be much more research. And most importantly, come to the table. If you're not invited, bring your chair, which is exactly what I did. I was not invited to this table, but I brought my chair, Madam Chair, because it's important for the community. It's important for our people. It's important for our island. It's important for sustainability. And all we are saying is let us continue working on our plans, because at the end of the day, we would provide this legislative body with a concrete plan that would be sustainable and modeled to fit this island. Madam Chair, I just need to tell you that when we do, and we will, when we do form this cooperative, and it is going to be called the Guam Livestock Producers Cooperative. We already have hired a consultant, Madam Chair. He's based out of Colorado. He has over 25 years of service in regulatory compliance and slaughterhouse operations. My entire committee is comprised of over 100 years in small scale, large scale slaughterhouses with single and multiple animal processing. And nobody wants to listen. It's unbelievable. We have all the professionals on our side. We're reaching out to the legislature. We're reaching out to the Department of Agriculture, and it's falling on deaf ears. I don't understand the logic behind that. We have the resources. We have the expertise. We have the knowledge. We have the professionals. Yet we are being pushed to the side. You know, Joseph Cameron as well. He's part of our group. Manny Duane is part of our group. It's unbelievable with the resources that we have. And this government refuses to listen. The director, and I'm not calling her out or anything, but I just need to tell the truth. She was sitting in our committee meetings. We did advise her not to move forward with this bill because we're still in the planning process, Madam Chair. We discovered early on that, like I said, a mobile unit is not the best unit, not the best way to go. I know I'm taking a lot of time. I have a lot of things on my mind. We will form this nonprofit cooperative. We will come to the table. Just give us an opportunity to plan this right. We want you at the table, Madam Chair. We want the legislature at the table or your representative. We want the Department of Agriculture at the table. We want everybody that has a concern or an interest in this process. We do. We're inclusive. We're transparent. Nothing that we have done today, we can't share. We want to share. We're open. And you know, I just think I can't really talk to the merits of the actual bill because it's to me, I'm kind of caught between a rock and a hard place because I see it in one way that nothing is stopping this cooperative, this new cooperative, from applying for the RFP. But at the same time, you know, we have been already working on a plan. And this bill came as a real big surprise to us during the middle of our heavy meetings. Madam Chair, we're all farmers and ranchers. We work 24/7. We're out and I haven't been to my farm today. It's already 11:30. I have to go take care of my egg, but I don't know if I need to harvest it or not. I don't know because I'm here. Taking my time away from my business, my livelihood, how I feed my family. To come to testify against a bill that I should be agreeing to. Because it's going to help our community. But the content I can't support. I can't. Taking lands away from the land trust, I mean, without really looking at the gist of what needs to be done. I'm not saying we're not going to approach that route. I'm saying we're going to sit at the table with the commission. We're also going to sit at the table with the Ancestral Lands Commission because I truly believe, and by the way, the land that the current farmers cooperative sits, I found that land. It was designated and it was Spanish Crown lands. We did not take a single lot away from the trust. As a matter of fact, what we did with Defuento Senator Ben was we developed a payment mechanism to bring income into the Ancestral Land Trust Commission so they can fulfill their mandate. This is what we're about. We're not about division and exclusion. We know it's important, Madam Chair, and I plead with this committee not to pass this bill out of committee. Please, let's revisit the bill. Let's reintroduce another bill. And if the good Senator Clynton Ridgell, I'm willing to work with any one of you. If you guys want a name on the bill, it doesn't matter to me whose name goes on it. It doesn't matter to me about recognition and notoriety. It doesn't matter. All of that does not matter to me. What matters is the substance of what we are trying to do and ensuring that the people of Guam don't get ripped off. Now, I also want to add $3 million. Okay, I don't know how much it's going to cost, but I'll tell you what, this nonprofit cooperative association will not first look at Gov Guam to do any funding. There are grants out there that are available. I already researched them. We already have everything in line. It's just a matter of completing the plans, drafting up the grant application, and submitting it. But we still want to be inclusive with the legislative body. I think I went way over my time, and I think you understand the gist of my testimony. And I will remain on for whatever questions anyone has with regards to this bill. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I really appreciate your time.
Great, thank you so much.
Madam Chair, if I may add something, I just want to clarify a couple of things because of the statements made during this by the previous speaker. So just for the record, the invites did not come out from my office. My office is not the committee overseeing this public hearing. I also did not schedule the public hearing. I actually preferred that we waited, but it was actually the speaker who decided to schedule the public hearing for this day. So it's not because of me that we're hearing the bill today. Also, I was not in charge of inviting anyone for the public hearing today. This is all done by this committee, which I am not the chair of. So I just want to be clear and on the record with that. Yeah,
I understood,
I introduced the bill, but I actually was not asking for a public hearing to be held on this bill immediately.
Thank you for the clarification, Senator, and in no way, shape, or form was I directing that comment towards you at all. I do know how the committee structure works. I was a former employee, a committee head for the legislature back in the 90s. So I know the process. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Camacho, for your testimony. We'd like to now open the floor for the next person, who's I just got a message that Director Munoz has testimony to provide. Is that correct?
Sure, yes.
You're recognized.
Madam Chair. Half a day, Madam Chair and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to provide written testimony for Bill number 188-36. Bill 188-36 will help Guam get that much closer to the construction of a commercial slaughterhouse. This will enhance the local meat industry on Guam, which has been advocated by preceding administrations and legislatures for more than 30 years, but has never come to fruition. Since 1991, the Department of Agriculture has assisted livestock raisers, primarily Guam hog producers, by promoting selective breeding to improve hog quality and herd size under its artificial insemination and swine distribution program. The benefits of that program have historically been limited by lack of commercial slaughterhouse facility. In the absence of a slaughterhouse, the growth of the agriculture livestock industry has been at a virtual standstill, and livestock ranchers began reducing their herds. Cattle, swine, goats, poultry, and at times deer as livestock were sold live at the hoof because of the absence of a USDA certified slaughterhouse facility on island. A feasibility study was conducted by the East-West Center at the University of Manoa, Hawaii in the early 1990s, exploring Guam's need of a slaughterhouse concept.
Findings of the study determined that there were over 80 swine producers on island actively engaged in promoting livestock production. There were also poultry, cattle, and goat production in an upswing. Guam was poised for the development of a locally supported commercial meat industry. As no industry developed, no slaughterhouse was built, nearly all livestock ranchers reduced their stock or closed operations completely. Maintenance and overhead costs of the increasing cost of imported feed bore no benefits, with little opportunity to recover costs through a commercial meat industry. With the evolution of the livestock meat processing industry nationally, the Guam Department of Agriculture, together with vital stakeholder partners, including the Guam Livestock Association, which we understood at the time to be in the process of reconstituting itself, and the University of Guam, has reinvigorated the conversation surrounding this opportunity for increasing Guam's food security and developing a new, viable economic revenue stream for local agriculture. These stakeholders met on multiple occasions to discuss this industry. The slaughterhouse presents a process by which we can usher in a new industry for existing livestock farmers, few as they may be, while encouraging former livestock ranchers to once again believe in the possibility of bringing fresh, locally raised, sustainable meat to Guam's residents. Department of Agriculture with Guam Livestock Association, the University of Guam, and other partners will assist livestock ranchers in increasing the number of heads, improving their breeds, increasing the agricultural footprint for livestock production, and best of all, increasing Guam's sustainable food security. A slaughterhouse will enable the capacity of Guam's livestock industry to raise and process cattle, goats, poultry, and venison in manageable quantities, while proponents and advocates push the industry to attain more ambitious goals. A slaughterhouse facility has long been a need in Guam's livestock producers, community members, and local government. A livestock meat industry would serve to improve the quality of life on island by creating sustainable food security. A livestock meat industry will also provide fresh, locally raised beef, pork, poultry, and venison meats in the market, making them fresh, affordable, and readily available for residents. Traditional slaughtering of any particular livestock has primarily been for home consumption and community celebrations. Culling livestock for meats was often a labor-intensive effort involving family and friends. With a slaughterhouse, the work will be manageable and efficiently handled for our community. Ranchers and consumers have expressed support and excitement for the prospect of locally harvested fresh meat. In 2021, Guam is now in the position to make this economic industry a reality. And I also want to state or add on to comments made by Mr. Camacho that yes, from the beginning, when they first called us or invited us to a meeting with them, the Department of Agriculture, primarily myself and Mr. Borja, have been present and participating in each of their meetings. During those meetings, we did share this proposed bill before it was introduced with that committee, and Mr. Camacho made evident his desire to speak with Senator Ridgell about the legislation. It sounds like they did not have that opportunity to do that, but we did bring it to the attention of the committee we were meeting with before the bill was introduced. And I do take exception because it did sound as though he was being critical of Mr. Borja, who has been a part of trying to make this industry a reality for the past 31 years, that none of this blame falls on Mr. Borja for circumstances that were beyond his control with respect to the funding mechanism provided for the facility in the 90s, as well as the land. I believe that money was deviated to build Southern High School. So Mr. Borja, in his capacity, did not have that control at the time. And we have been present at the meetings, as I said, and the committee that we met with at the time didn't believe or did not state that a mobile facility was not something we should do. Actually, the committee at the time agreed that we would use the mobile facility as a starting point and then build a slaughterhouse facility around that mobile unit. So those are just some points I wanted to clarify from the conversations that we had when we met with the committee on multiple occasions, multiple nights for up to 2 hours a night to discuss this. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Director Chelsea. Director Joe Borja, would you like to provide any testimony at this time? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I actually did already a written testimony.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. We'll make sure that's included. All right. So now we'd like to recognize Miss Dr. Lu Liu, you have
Hello.
Yes.
Alpha Day Group. Thank you for the opportunity to join this testify for the Bill 188-36. I'm Dr. Jen Hong Liu, a new animal science faculty at UOG with a focus in meat science and muscle biology. I've had roughly 6 to 8 years of working intensively in different USDA inspected slaughterhouses. And I would like to thank the group for providing everyone's time and the opportunity joining. I don't have any proposed or prepared. I'm just here to follow with the topic, as I think it's an important topic that requires careful planning, and would love to be involved and show my support about the topic for fruitful outcome. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Leo. Now I'd like to recognize Mr. Ted Nelson to provide testimony on Bill 188.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Nelson, if you can direct the camera to you so we can see you.
Okay. Good morning. And I like what Mr. Sanaga, I just wanted to get a clarification. If you guys going to keep talking and arguing, it doesn't accomplish anything. I applaud the co-op, Tom Camacho, Ernie, Mike Uggan, of really trying to institute a plan to make something work. But in the past, I had my uncle David Kiriwa, who at that time, his pig farm was allowed by law to operate there, and he followed everything regarding as far as operating his pig farm. And I'm going to talk straight to everybody because people don't really know the history. You know what killed that operation? The man went and tried to open a slaughterhouse. Politics, big business, importing meat, and all that were main factors of him not being able to do it. And Uncle Dave Kirigwa worked 100% of his time and worked so hard to develop and get that pig farm going and wanted to open a slaughterhouse. But of course, it was on land trust land, politics, and a lot of negative factors, a lot of infighting that just killed it. I applaud for the co-op to doing a plan, but maybe a private and partnership with co-op, find solutions to the answer. This is still United States of America. Every private citizen, be a farmer, being if he's licensed with as a commercial certified farmer, or anybody that has interest in developing a slaughterhouse, abide by what rules and regulation by law how to operate a slaughter. If you want to entice growth in this type of business, like Primo Tom said, 31 years, nothing happened. It's not a blame game. It's deeper than that. So if this thing is going to really work, open it up even to private individuals who have their own private land, and will incur all costs to develop the slaughterhouse that complies to all local and federal laws. If they don't comply to these type of things, then they won't be allowed to open. But if you really want to make this industry grow, then do it. Remember Jones and Tinian. Uncle David had to go. He got so tired of it. He got old. He moved to Luta. Manipalutas esta osungwe. He was tired of it. Find solutions, please, because even now, I'm a farmer and everything, like Primo Tom, I've been doing it forever too. And if they can open it up to private business and the private individuals that can get the capital funding and assistance from the co-op and USDA to operate and comply by all federal and local laws to operate, be it on the environment, and if they're not, allow them to do it. It's a free market economy. Let it open up. Co-op, like Primo Tom said, they're doing so much grant research. Maybe they could put in how to assist or partner up the co-op with somebody that has the means and the funding to really work it out and partner up and work that expertise from their side to assist and formulate a partnership. And if they want to sell a co-op the meat and all that, then so be it. But just please find solutions. No one's to blame. I've seen this for so long. A lot of you weren't even around when Uncle David Kirigwa tried to do it. Even Chris Torres their operations were top notch. Even as a pig farm, your waste is only going so far how you raise your pig and everything. They abided by law and all that. But if this is going to keep continuing, we're not going to get anywhere. I think there has to be, get all the experts, sit down, and develop some kind of real thing to let this thing work. Otherwise, we're going to wait another 31 years. And there's no one to blame for it but politics and everything else. That slaughterhouse thing way back in the 90s was a lot deeper than you senators that weren't even around. Senator Joel, San Augustine, the old boys know what really happened, you know? And Mr. San Augustine made some valid points. They used everything they can, from land trust, how come he has this much land, to the watershed, but yet they allowed him to operate a farm. And he's right, they have big chicken farms back in the inside in that area, Machana and all that. That you really look at them, at that time, they weren't being regulated, or people, the enforcement wasn't happening. So just instill regulations and law and policy for anybody to operate a farm and just let it work out somehow. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nelson, for your testimony. Now to the next person, Mr. Joe Muffness, former Forestry Chief from the Department of Ag. You're recognized to provide testimony.
Was that me, Senator?
Yes, that was you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had to just step away real quick. Oh, anyways, thank you, Senator, for allowing me to testify. Just run real quick, quick thing. You know, regardless of how you move forward, given considering all the issues and concerns that have been brought up from the previous speakers, I think one thing that I hope that you consider moving forward is providing additional funding to the Department of Agriculture to have somebody to be trained and certified as a USDA inspector. So I think that's one component of the slaughterhouse that is needed. Instead of relying on the federal government to come and do the inspections, I think if you have somebody locally funded and trained, I think that'll be very helpful. That's it, Senator. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Muffness. And so now we'd like to move on to the next part of this public hearing. So for the record, requests for feedback were sent to the Honorable Mayor Anthony Sanchez of GIGO, the Honorable Mayor Jesse Alec, President of the Mayor's Council of Guam, and then Walter Leon Guerrero, Administrator of Guam EPA, Department of Public Health Division of Environmental Health, and others that have come here today to testify. So regarding the fiscal impact, so fiscal note impact, BBR notes that per correspondence with the Department of Revenue and Tax, for other proposed legislations, DRT concludes that the department has paid to taxpayers of record an average of $53 million in EITC reimbursement since 2017. The Bureau notes that several proposed legislations have been introduced appropriating funds from FY 2021 EITC reimbursement, including two which have been included in the 2022 Budget Act. The final amount to be reimbursed for EITC has yet to be determined, as well as the timeframe in which the funds will be availed to the government of Guam. Should the IRS and the U.S. Treasury avail EITC reimbursements via trust, those funds will not be subject to legislative appropriation, which is what is $3 million, the source of the $3 million for this bill. The fiscal note was prepared in September 2021. However, internal office research showing updated total for the proposed bill is $117,580,070 as of last week. Okay, so the Legal Bureau's review and recommendations. The committee, this is the Legislative Legal Bureau. The committee should confirm the full lot description stated throughout the bill. Note that we cannot confirm the status of the lot designated for transfer from the Chamorro Land Trust Commission for the proposed slaughterhouse. 5 GCA section 69106 enacted by Public Law 24-96 mandated the transfer of the same lot identified in the bill from CLTC to the commercial corporation designated to manage and operate the slaughterhouse. The bill authorizes the grant of a 50-year lease on the property designated for the fair market value and provides a reversionary clause. Note that there are no lease terms for the legislature's consideration or review in the bill, nor is there any anticipated opportunity for the legislature to approve of said lease. Thus, the terms or conditions of the lease for the slaughterhouse, aside from the term length and rent being based on fair market value, will potentially remain unknown prior to execution. Additionally, it is unclear at what point for the lease will be determined, fair market value for the lease will be determined. Example, upon award or upon completion of construction, if the rent term throughout the length of the lease will be fixed, if it will change accordingly to fair market value over time, and when it will be reviewed, if at all. The committee may also consider qualifying when the property will revert to Chamorro Land Trust. Currently, the bill does not provide a specific date that the lot will be used for a slaughterhouse. So this is the legal counsel's review. The bill vaguely authorizes the government to provide direct financial assistance or loan guarantees to the party selected to build and operate a slaughterhouse in an amount of $3 million from the EITC reimbursements for fiscal year 2021. We recommend amending this language to directly appropriate funding. The committee should, however, confirm if such appropriation is consistent with or in conflict with Public Law 36-54 and the reservation of said EITC reimbursements. Okay, so now moving on to questions. This is for Director Joe Borja. Can you confirm the current jurisdiction of this property? Okay, so maybe we can skip over these questions.
Yes, that's under public law. That was submitted in my testimony.
Okay, yeah, I didn't get a chance to look at that. All right. All right, so next, thank you. Well, we'll take a look at that closely. All right, so maybe if I can recognize the speaker at this time, I believe, yeah, if she can provide.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify one question regarding land management. Your testimony states that the ownership of the property of this particular lot is with the government of Guam, but that the Department of Agriculture has administrative jurisdiction pursuant to Public Law 20-197. So Public Law 20-197 designates designates this lot as a public animal processing facility. This was done in 1990, but I didn't see it particularly naming Department of Agriculture. But my concern is that subsequent to that, there were, Public Law 24-96. That was the one that created the corporation, for the slaughterhouse. And it, I think that was in 1999. And so particularly section 69108 of that said that law repealed Public Law 20-68, repealed Public Law 20-197. So, and then this bill, so it talks about, and that law so then said that it was transferring from CLTC to the corporation. And so I just wanted to confirm whether, you are saying that this property is not under the jurisdiction of the Chamorro Land Trust at this point?
No, Senator, the property was at one time part of the Chamorro Land Trust basic lot, and then it was severed out. It was carved out pursuant to Public Law 2197. And when the bill was submitted, I didn't see a map, so I have to go back and actually find the map for that property. And even that map had another error, irrelevant to this particular lot. But this lot was severed out of a piece of property. The basic lot, maybe the mother lot, as we should call it, was from Chamorro Land Trust property. Basic lot.
Right, and so, but did it transfer? It was severed out, but was its ownership transfer?
No, ownership never transferred.
Okay, so that's why I'm asking. I think when this public law 24-96 was passed, it cited, the lot number, land management drawing number, certificate of title number, the same ones that you cited as well, and the area, and it says transferred from the Chamorro Land Trust Commission to the corporation for the purpose of that slaughterhouse corporation. However, it did have a reversionary clause, and as testified earlier, it's not clear when the reversion will occur. It's clear that the property has not been used for its intended purpose. So I'm not sure if that transfer did not occur or did occur, but in any event, I'd like to review that public law 24-96 and to confirm whether Chamorro Land Trust has jurisdiction. I'd also just like to ask Chamorro Land Trust if the director's still here. Oh, hi, director. Just if you can confirm. So this property, it's either within, it's surrounded by Chamorro Land Trust properties, is that correct? Yeah, and can you just tell us the nature of the properties that are in this area?
So directly adjacent are agricultural leases with the Chamorro Land Trust. We do have a tract of land across the street, and it looks a little bit south of this property that's largely residential. However, not to say that the agricultural lots that are adjacent do not have homes on it, because they are allowed to have a residence on agricultural land.
Right. Do you have maps that show the residences, I guess, or something like that you could provide to us, so we just get an idea of how close we're talking about?
We'll try to get a satellite image and overlays to you.
All right, and then the map that was provided, this one, it has the big circle on it. Is that that circle represents Chamorro Land Trust property?
Senator, Speaker, I can send you the overlay with the outlines of, yeah, and we'll provide you with a list of lots in our inventory.
Okay, and I heard you talk about, potential impacts if there are residences in the area. I'm sure that is everybody's concern, and how to mitigate those is part of how we plan a good slaughterhouse. So Department of Ag, I'm sure you are working with others to mitigate those effects on residences. Do you have an idea of, like, is there a certain number of feet that these things should be located away from residences? Or what is the standard that we're going to go by?
John Borja wanted to comment on that, Madam Chair.
Okay, Mr. Borja.
Chair, some of those agricultural leases in the surrounding areas are also raising livestock. They're raising cattle, goats, chickens, and whatnot. Some of them are free ranging.
Yeah, my
and
question.
They're allowed to have. Yeah, they're allowed to have homesteads on it. So most of those lots will have a homestead. We pretty much know that almost every one of them would have a homestead, except for some parcels that have no homestead, because it's basically would be reducing the size of their pasture area and whatnot. So yeah, so there's a handful of them that all of them will have some kind of security house or homestead for themselves. So we don't exactly have a fixed number, but we do have a list of the livestock producers that are from that area.
Okay, but no, I want to know, what is the standard? What are the standard you want to regulate slaughterhouses by? How close to residential areas should they be or not be?
Oh, in regards to that, basically a slaughterhouse should be a self-contained area. The only thing that will have the livestock out on the premises on the ground is a holding lot or feed lot prior to it being slaughtered. And those are not basically a long-term thing. So there's a lot of waste management practices that are put in place. Most of it also for the feeding part, and all that good stuff is being done by coordination with the landowner or the livestock producer. But so containment of that, normally in a previous task force that I was in, they were looking at 1 acre for parking, 1 acre for a feedlot, meaning to hold the cattle and stuff or livestock before slaughtering, and at least a 1 acre facility size for the actual building.
All right, and is it suitable for slaughterhouses to be located in R1 zones?
Well, that whole area was designated as an agricultural area at the time when prospects were done for the slaughterhouse. So that was the plan at that time,
Right.
but not for R1. But for R1 area, some of the public health issues would be with environmental public health regarding how many numbers of chickens, for example, in the residential area. I believe it could be up to 24 or 18, 24.
Okay, you cut out there. Can you repeat that last part?
So I was saying about the environmental portion, how it's going to be affecting the residential areas. Part of that regulatory stuff is with the environmental, with public health regarding residential and livestock in the area. So on our part, it's not clearly defined because the area has been zoned as an agricultural zone.
Okay.
In other words, they could have a homestead.
Of course, this lot is designated agriculture, yes, but I'm just concerned about the surrounding area. Okay, if you don't mind, Madam Chair, if I could put up the map. I think my staff has a map. This lot is located, if I'm not mistaken, right across from Anderson Air Force Base gate, one of the gates. Can we just
Before
put
the
that?
turn towards us.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so Mr. Borja, are you aware of, sorry, is it Director Camacho? Are you aware of this map? We're like, oh, this residential area here on the bottom right hand. Is that also Chamorro Land Trust property or not?
It's my understanding that the surrounding lots, and I'll provide you the exact legal descriptions and ownership, but it's my understanding that surrounding the slaughterhouse is Chamorro Land Trust property. Also, the property demarcated in red.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Those are my questions.
All right, thank you, Speaker. Okay, moving on to the other questions. Is it for this Department of Ag? Is it the intention to deposit the lease proceeds from the slaughterhouse into the Chamorro Land Trust Survey Infrastructure Fund, even if the property is under your jurisdiction? This is for Director Chelsea.
I believe that was the intention, yes.
And if so, what are the benefits to the Department of Ag to have this property under your jurisdiction if the lease proceeds go to CLTC?
Well, when we discussed either a mobile harvest unit or the slaughterhouse, the department didn't want to be the manager or operator of these facilities. We just wanted to help whatever entity was going to operate these facilities get situated so that they could operate it. I believe the intent, and maybe Senator Ridgell can speak to this, of putting it under the administration of the Department of Agriculture was just so that we could help them with that process. And it was going to be an agriculture industry. And if we were going to obtain grants or help whatever entity do that, then the department had the administrative authority to do so with that piece of property.
Okay, so yeah, I guess the question is the benefits to Department of Ag should the proceeds go to CLTC. So basically you were just providing voluntary services.
It's not, but well, I mean, it's voluntary, but it's part of our role as the Department of Agriculture. I mean, it's the job that John Borja has been trying to do as chief of that section. We would dedicate the staff needed to help get whatever entity was able to operate it to the point where they were operating smoothly. And then we would just want to encourage local agriculture and industry with fresh meat. So that was our intent, or that's our role. And we didn't look for what was going to be a benefit to the agency for that.
Okay, thank you for that response. Okay, so 5 GCA Chapter 69 authorizes and establishes the Guam Slaughterhouse Corporation to accomplish the mandates in the Guam Slaughterhouse Corporation Act. By issuing an RFP to a private company, as is proposed in Bill 188, is it your belief that this would bypass the requirements under the Guam Slaughterhouse Corporation Act, specifically Section 69104, 69105, and 69107? So how does this proposal fit in with the existing requirements of the Guam Slaughterhouse Corporation Act if the current proposal is to award to a private entity via an RFP? And an RFP is probably preferable to the existing language that sets up a very specific public-private partnership for one private corporation established by law. Okay, so I guess this question is for Director Breck, Munia Breck.
I'm sorry, ma'am, can you repeat the question?
Or this is in relation to the Guam Slaughterhouse Corporation Act. So by Bill 188, by issuing an RFP to a private company as proposed by Bill 188, do you see any conflicts with the requirements under the Guam Slaughterhouse Corporation Act, specifically Section 69104, 69105, and 69107? Have you had a chance to review that?
Yes, I'm sorry, I need to bring that back up, but I remember discussing this with Senator Ridgell's staff, and this legislation was intended to replace that requirement for the Guam Slaughterhouse Corporation.
Okay, so
Yeah, Madam Chair, maybe if I could chime in. Yeah, the idea here was to, instead of going with the Guam Slaughterhouse Corporation, because there is no more Guam Slaughterhouse Corporation, it's basically been defunct for many years now, was instead to have this go through GITA and agriculture to work together to come up with some sort of public-private partnership where there's some sort of RFP that goes out. So they would come up with whatever the request for proposal is, and then have the private sector come forward and provide proposals on whatever type of mechanism they come up with for the public-private partnership. So the idea was really have GITA at the forefront of developing the public-private partnership as the Economic Development Authority, together with the Department of Agriculture.
okay, thank you. So this is for Director. Is there a history? Can you provide any history regarding the Slaughterhouse Task Force? Do you feel that this should be reestablished and updated since the mission was specific to USDA approval, which expired in 1998?
I think John Borja could provide a more comprehensive history, but I've read through what has happened thus far. I believe it was to work with the USDA to develop the sanitary regulations, what's called the HACCP, and also I think at the time they were sending some of the Department of Agriculture team to get certified to conduct USDA inspections. But John Borja has the more comprehensive understanding of the history of all of the task force that have existed.
Okay, Mr. Borja, would you like to add on to the discussion?
Yes, Madam Chair. What is that? Yes, that's definitely correct. We were part of a group that were to be pretty much involved with a task force with other agencies, light agencies as well. We were involved with other light agencies like EPA, land management, governor's office, and even at that point in time, it was with some of the private companies that wanted to be sharing the part of the interest of the slaughterhouse potential. Yes, having USDA on the ground, it was very, very important at that time, and it was very a great concern because of the cost of having them on board. Basically, we literally had to pay for the way here, pay for the inspectors, pay for the housing, lodging, and all the other indemnities that comes to that. But we were sent to be trained to be knowledgeable in the areas of waste management, organic farming practices, and whatnot. And all this we put together as a component, so we can come out with an end result, end package that we can present to the public and to have a working feasible package that is environmentally safe. EPA was and USDA NRCS at that time. We were working together with coming out with a plan to contain waste management plans. So in the other areas that we were looking at for the potential slaughterhouse sites, it was more challenging than any other particular site other than where that area now is being suggested for the slaughterhouse, because of the closeness of sewer systems, and to be able to be tapping into the infrastructure. So a lot of stuff is basically we're asked of, we're presented, we're discussed, we're put on the table, and was debated. So a lot of the challenges was, if it wasn't for a funding challenge, it was for example, operational knowledge of a slaughterhouse at that time. So USDA was more than happy to be on board, assisting us with what we may need. So we were working closely with them at that time. So that's what were the outcomes of the task force. And then the East-West Center in Hawaii did a feasibility study, because we're looking at financing that program itself, the slaughterhouse. And then USDA was also looking at wastewater to divert water that is not being used for other purposes for public use, is to be channeled to that slaughterhouse for waste management is one thing, but also to use up water that's contaminated, like for example, the golf courses have all these other waters that the water lines were contaminated or whatnot, their wells. A lot of these plans was to be environmentally sound, to have a perfectly put in place concept of a slaughterhouse to increase the potential of the production of livestock in Guam.
All right, thank you, Mr. Borja. So we're coming up on time. We have a session at 1 o'clock. So I would like to open the floor to my colleagues for any questions. Senator Brown, if you're present, you have any comments or questions at this time?
You're on mute. You're on mute.
Not so much questions, and I appreciate all the different views of testimony that have been provided this morning with regards to this issue, Madam Chair. I certainly hope the issue with regards to the actual property gets fully clarified, because I would be concerned if we're continuing to, through legislation, withdraw property from the land trust and dedicating for what may be arguably people may say is a very good purpose. I think to continue to diminish the assets of the trust and then mandate how they use it and how they lease it really was not the reason why we created the trust in the first place. So I hope that issue gets clarified if this bill is to move forward. The other concern I have, this is granted, it has been such a long-standing issue with regards to the slaughterhouse, and we've heard this all the way down to the mobile slaughterhouse and things of that nature. I would have concern if we're going to move forward with this, and this is something that the government of Guam is going to be directly involved in putting in place, because I just see a lot of concerns. I mean, it's one thing for the government of Guam through Department of Agriculture to help facilitate agriculture and other things in our community related to that, related to the future development and continued development of food resources on Guam, animals and things of that nature that people want to raise. But for the government of Guam itself to be directly involved in the facilitation or operation of a slaughterhouse, I would have concern about it. There's so much this government is mandated to do and so much that it doesn't do very well. And so I don't want to see the government of Guam directly engaged in managing or operating a slaughterhouse, because there are other avenues available. And certainly a number of our members of our community have testified this morning who have firsthand experience that there are other options, there's other expertise, certainly at the University of Guam and other areas and other resources that can be put on the table to facilitate it. If there's really a demand, it will happen. But I think for us to want to be the father or mother of this process really is not our role. It should not be the role of the government of Guam, because I think we're adding on an additional responsibility that we really don't have the expertise to do. This whole issue of USDA certification has been one that has been around an awful long time, and we don't have any federal partner at the moment testifying with regards to this issue. I don't know if USDA is going to delegate their authority. USDA certification is not limited just to addressing meats that are processed through a slaughterhouse on Guam. USDA certification exists for all other food sources that we're looking at that we generate for vegetables, fruits, and things of that nature. We don't have USDA certification for that, nor have we had it for quite some time. It's not impossible to accomplish that, but I think those issues need to be put on the table as to why we've not been able to successfully do that, so that we can have an avenue for our local farmers, ranchers, to be able to generate their crop beyond just local production and expand that so that they actually can export it and open up a greater market or source market for our community here. Those are the kind of things we need the technical information on. But overall, I mean, I understand the interest and desire, and there's a reason why this issue's been dragging on for 30 years. When things don't happen, there's a reason for it. And I just don't think the cure-all is for the government of Guam to interject itself, to say, here, we're giving you the property, and here we're giving you, X amount of $1 million, that we have tremendous critical needs in the government that need to be addressed. I like our generosity, but I don't know if the ratepayers and taxpayers of Guam can afford all the generosity of our legislature that seems to want to appropriate money left and right when we economically don't even know where we're going to be in the next few months. So I have reservations about that. So at this point, with regards to this bill, I'm not inclined to support it, but I do want to hear in time as other organizations here that are represented move forward what their plans and ideas are, because it sounds like they're taking some direct initiative and engagement to actually get this process off the ground to benefit members of our community. So with that, Madam Chair, I know we're heading into session. I don't want to penalize our other colleagues that have, the few of us that actually engage in these public hearings, to not have an opportunity to speak or relay their questions before we go into session this afternoon. With that, Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Right. Since it was Masi, Senator Brown, Senator Talataitigui, you're recognized.
Thank you. I just want to thank everyone who was here to testify and those who are very passionate about this. Of course, it's obvious that this bill has a lot of concerns. My biggest concern, of course, is the funding issue that's placed in this bill, and I just wanted everybody to realize that this money is not a reality at this point at all. So, I appreciate Tom, Joseph Cameron, Manny Duenas, the group that gets together and continue to try and find a way to assist the farmers, to producing more food for our island without being dependent on off-island. There is a question I do have for Chelsea or anyone here. Can there be is there a private slaughterhouse? Not is there, of course not. Can a private slaughterhouse be operated on Guam now?
I can actually answer that question. The answer is yes, but no one has done it. The answer is they're just waiting for someone to apply. I met with USDA and USDA inspectors. I was told at the beginning of this process, which I started last term, working on a slaughterhouse, I asked the same questions. Why isn't there a slaughterhouse? What's going on? Why can't anyone do one? I was told so many excuses. One excuse I was told was that there are no USDA inspectors on Guam. So I never believe what I hear at first take. I always like to confirm the information I'm told. So my office called the U.S. Department of Agriculture's office on Guam and found out there are USDA meat inspectors on island. And I met with both of them. And I asked them, what is it preventing us from having a slaughterhouse? They said, not us, we're just waiting on someone to apply. That's all it takes. Anyone from the private sector can apply for it right now. If they have the money, if they have the funding, if they have the land to do it, they can apply for it now as long as they meet all of the requirements of the USDA and other environmental requirements. I'm sure the US EPA and public health, if they meet all these regulatory requirements, by all means, the private sector can open a slaughterhouse. The thing is, no one has done it.
Thank you, Senator Ridgell. I'd like to hear from the Department of Agriculture with regards to that question as well.
Yes, Senator, any private entity could open up a facility. They could import a mobile harvest unit if they wanted to, but as Senator Ridgell stated, none of them have. We haven't had anyone reach out to us about that, other than the meetings that we've had with the Livestock Association, which I guess is going to now be the Livestock Cooperative.
Okay. Well, my concern too is if we have notified those surrounding the area that surrounds the potential lot, that the families are brought into the play here to at least provide testimony from them. Angie, I think if you mentioned, hi, how are you? The land that's surrounding the area that's in question here, there are families nearby have they've been contacted at all to let them know of this legislation?
Not to my knowledge, Senator. I don't believe we've done that yet.
Okay, I think it would be a good idea for them to provide testimony. I mean, right now, the way the bill is written, and I don't believe it's defunct, there's nothing in the current law and chapters in this title that would defunct Chapter 69, Title 5 at all, unless it says it in the bill that after a certain amount of time. But I think the legislation, the way it's written right now, it needs a lot of work on. And I'm glad to see, though, that there are people out here who are here today wanting to find a happy goal ending result for this, and because it's been long overdue. That being said, I won't delay it any further. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity. And thank you again, everyone who's here to testify.
Thank you, Senator Tydegui. Senator Tony Atta, if you have any comments or questions, I believe he was here earlier. It looks like I don't see him anymore. Okay. All right, now to perhaps closing for, I'd like to recognize Senator Ridgell for closing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for Ms. Angie Camacho from the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, if she's still on. Hi, the testimony provided today is in opposition to the measure. Is that correct? I'm sorry, you're on mute.
Senator, as it's written, we do have our reservations with regards to supporting a slaughterhouse. And we do support a slaughterhouse. We do have concerns, though, with this particular legislation.
Your testimony provided today, was that ratified by the Chamorro Land Trust Commission members?
No, sir.
So it's not
just a testimony. It's just a testimony.
So I just need to clarify, is it testimony on behalf of yourself as the acting director of the Land Trust Commission, or is it as the Land Trust Commission's testimony?
It is testimony. It is actually the testimony of our chairman, but not on behalf of the commission.
So it's not approved by the entire commission. It's just a testimony of the chairman of the commission? I'm trying to clarify exactly. Okay. So it's not testimony ratified by the entire commission. I just want that to be clear for the record. It's the testimony of the chairman of the commission, not approved by the entire commission. I just want to be clear on the record who's representing the testimony. My second question is for Mr. Borja. Mr. Borja, you were part of this slaughterhouse task force in the past, is that correct?
Yes, Senator.
And this current lot that was selected now, so the bill I've introduced does not identify the land on its own. What we're doing is we're looking at a piece of land that was already identified previously by the task force. Is that correct?
That is correct, Senator. That was the final site.
How long did you guys take to determine this site as this preferred site for a slaughterhouse?
It took several task force meetings, and looking at where the potential for waste management was the biggest concern. And it took several weeks to months to even come to a conclusion as to where would be a viable place. And knowing that it's an agricultural zone, we have livestock being produced up there, that was one of the potential for it having been placed up there.
Are there other reasons why this piece of land was selected by the task force?
Yes, because of the closeness of infrastructure and also for the increased production of livestock within the area. Like I said, there are livestock producers there now.
Were environmental concerns taken into account, considering its location over the aquifer?
Yes, the number of livestock to be held in the feedlot, plus also the number of livestock to be processed through, all in consideration for the waste management was because of the sewer system that was available nearby.
So this land sounds like something that was determined by a task force. Yes, it was many years ago, but it sounds like the task force did a lot of work looking at different sites before this site was selected. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator. In fact, the last site before this site was at the commercial port, which was in total disagreement by a lot of the task force members because they were thinking of just putting all the waste in the water. which wasn't ideally a good prospect for any kind of community feedback as well. So this was the most ideal place to have the slaughterhouse located.
What are some other reasons for this site being selected? Well, let me actually backtrack. What were some other potential sites of the slaughterhouse that the task force looked at?
The Agate Marina area down in Agate, Senator, down in Agate Marina, but because they saw the potential of the marina increasing traffic and whatnot, and because there was already a chicken farm down there, CNH, and the chicken farm was moved up to Dead Low, and when it closed down, it was because of the variant disease or the scare that was happening at the time. So they shut that down as a potential vector, and they turned it into a nursery. But the other two sites was at the commercial port and at Agate Marina area. And it was going to be a problematic thing because, again, they're looking at waste management and also what's going to be developed in the area.
Do you remember what other members were on this task force? What other agencies were represented on this task force?
It was EPA, there was Land Management, Governor's Office, Department of Agriculture. There was a representative from USDA. He didn't play a major role, but he did have some of the specifics in regards to this. And also, University of Guam was there, the Corporate Extension Service. We had some people that were interested with initiating some, even DITA back then, but it was Commerce, Department of Commerce was involved. Because the Department of Commerce was the one that I believe financed the East-West Center to do the impact study for the feasibility for slaughterhouse in Guam.
So it sounds like there was a task force comprised of all the major regulatory agencies involved who looked at different pieces of land, and that's how this particular lot that's in this reference in this bill was identified as the most suitable lot by the slaughterhouse task force that was previously in existence.
Yes, to come to the consensus, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that's all clear. That this is not something that was plucked out of thin air. This is not a piece of land that was just arbitrarily selected. There was a task force that was impaneled years ago to determine the best site for a slaughterhouse, and this is the site they came up with. So all my bill is doing is saying, okay, since this has already gone through a task force, regulatory agencies have looked at it, this land was previously selected and chosen by this government task force as the best site for a slaughterhouse. Let's move forward with this site. Let's identify some funding to move forward with the construction of a slaughterhouse on this site, not the operation of the slaughterhouse, but the help with the construction of the slaughterhouse and whatever necessary equipment, and then have a private company, private sector, whatever it is, whether it's a nonprofit organization or whoever, but a private entity be the ones to operate and manage the slaughterhouse. That's all that this bill is looking to do. And the reason I introduced this bill is because after meeting with and talking with so many people, I found that for some reason or another, no one has invested in a slaughterhouse. No one has put their money where their mouth is and opened a slaughterhouse. There's been a lot of talk. There's been talks of slaughterhouses opening elsewhere, talks of mobile houses, and by all means, the private sector can do it. And now some may say, well, maybe the private sector is not doing it because it's not feasible financially and maybe there's no money in it. But I would beg to differ because there's a slaughterhouse in Tinian and in Saipan. Now, if our brothers and sisters to the north can have a slaughterhouse and they have a much smaller population than we do, I don't know why we can't have a slaughterhouse. But I'm beginning to have an idea of why we can't have a slaughterhouse. And I'm just going to be honest. The reason I think we can't have a slaughterhouse is anytime some discussion of a slaughterhouse comes up, or anytime someone wants to do a slaughterhouse, somehow or another, that is blocked. And the reason why I think it's being blocked is I think everyone wants to be the person to own and operate this slaughterhouse. Everyone wants to be the person to make money off this slaughterhouse. And we have a crab mentality on Guam, where if someone is not the one operating the slaughterhouse, They don't like it. If they can't be the one to operate the slaughterhouse, they don't want anyone else to be the one to operate and own the slaughterhouse. I think that's what's going on. And I think that's why we don't have a slaughterhouse after decades and decades of talk, meaningless, useless talk. That's why there's no slaughterhouse, because everyone wants to be the guy who makes all the money off the slaughterhouse. And if that person can't be the guy or business to make the money off the slaughterhouse, no one can. So with that, I will keep pushing forward with this bill. We'll see what happens. Maybe ultimately the bill won't go anywhere, and maybe we won't have a slaughterhouse because no one wants us to have a slaughterhouse. That's fine. I'll do my best. I'll keep pushing for a slaughterhouse. I don't care who has the slaughterhouse. I don't care who owns the slaughterhouse. All I care is that the people of Guam can buy meat grown locally on Guam in our own stores and from our own restaurants, so we can stop importing 90% of our food to this island, and we can keep more money on Guam circulating in our economy while protecting our food security. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Ridgell. So is that your questions and concluding statement?
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, Senator Tadigui, you had one quick question.
Just a quick question. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. John Borja, you mentioned about a task force. Do you have any minutes or recordings of that task force that had met regarding the slaughterhouse?
Gee, that was but let me see if I can dig up something. Archives, but I'm not sure. I was actually part of the task force assigned. I have to check the other counterparts, if anything, if it is ever gonna even surface. But let me do a little research and come back to the committee.
Yeah, I'd like to see that task force, the minutes, the recordings, anything that you have discussing this slaughterhouse and the placement of this slaughterhouse. I know it was a long time ago and time changed, but thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity. And Mr. Borja, I look forward to those minutes of the meeting on your task force. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Tadigui. So being that, sorry, if there are any other further comments or questions? If there's any more comments or questions at this time? Okay, Senator Ridgell, any closing statements after that?
No, Madam Chair, thank you.
All right, so being that there are no further questions or comments, the public hearing for Bills 20-36 and 21-36 and Bill 188-36 are duly heard. And this public hearing is adjourned at the time of 12:32 p.m. Stu's Masi, everybody, for your participation. Have a great day.
I'll go look.